Paris, October 13th, 1307. Before the sun has even thought to rise, the city lies wrapped in a strange silence. But in the narrow streets near the Temple Quarter, that silence is about to shatter. Hooves strike cobblestones. The echo multiplies through the mist like drums of judgment. Hundreds of armored men, agents of the king, ride under sealed orders. Their faces are grim, their purpose absolute. Somewhere behind those stone walls sleeps the most powerful order in Christendom, the Knights of the Temple of Solomon. For 2 centuries, they have been warrior monks, defenders of pilgrims, bankers of kings, and guardians of secrets said to date back to the time of Solomon himself. But by dawn, they will be prisoners, branded heretics, and condemned to die. Inside the fortress, candles flicker in the chapel. A few brothers kneel before the altar, whispering prayers to a God they believe has not abandoned them. Then shouts, the sound of steel at the gate. Doors splinter, and boots thunder down the halls. One by one, the knights are seized, confused, half awake, demanding to know the meaning of this violence. The arrest warrants carry the royal seal of Philip IV of France, the Fair. His accusations are beyond belief. Blasphemy, sorcery, idol worship, secret rites mocking Christ. The brothers stare in disbelief. They are men of the cross. How could the church they serve turn against them? But this is no ordinary betrayal. King Philip is a man drowning in debt, and much of that debt is owed to the Templars. Their immense fortune, locked away in vaults and guarded by vows of silence, is a temptation too great for a desperate monarch. And yet, whispers in the royal court suggest the gold is only part of it. There are darker rumors that the Templars found something in Jerusalem long ago, something not meant for kings or popes, something that could rewrite the very faith of Christendom. If such a secret exists, Philip must erase it before it erases him. In the cells beneath Paris, the interrogation begins. The methods are cruel. Men of faith are stretched, burned, broken. The confessions come not from guilt, but agony. They admit to kissing idols, to denying Christ, to worshipping a mysterious severed head said to grant wisdom and power. But behind the pain, behind the forced words, something unsettling takes shape. The same image of a head, of light, of hidden knowledge, appears again and again. Could all of them be lying in the same way? Or are they protecting something far older than any earthly church? As the flames of the first executions light the sky, the people of Paris gather in uneasy silence. The Templars, once untouchable, are now reduced to ashes and smoke. Yet even in death, they defy their destroyers. Their Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, refuses to beg. Before he burns, he lifts his voice above the roar of fire and curses both king and pope, summoning them to God's judgment before the year's end. Witnesses swear that as the flames consumed him, his face was calm, as if he knew something none of them could see. The curse spreads faster than the fire. Within months, both Pope Clement V and King Philip IV are dead, one of illness, one struck down suddenly. The people whisper that divine vengeance walks the earth. But the question remains. If the Templars were truly destroyed, what became of their treasure, their secrets, their mysterious knowledge? Some say the king found nothing, that the vaults beneath the temple were empty long before his soldiers arrived. Others claim ships vanished from the port of La Rochelle days before the arrests, loaded with chests that were never seen again. Paris returns to silence, but it is no longer the same city. The great fortress of the temple stands abandoned, its halls echoing with ghosts of prayers and screams. A single torch burns where the altar once stood, a reminder of what was lost, or perhaps what was hidden. In the streets, beggars tell stories that the knights did not die at all, that they fled into the shadows, carrying with them a truth too dangerous for kings or popes to possess. They say the order had always known this would come, that the real temple was never made of stone, and its light could not be extinguished by fire. Centuries later, historians will debate what happened that night. Some will call it politics, others conspiracy. But even the most rational among them cannot explain why. Across Europe, strange symbols began to appear. Twin riders on a single horse, the red cross on white, the skull beneath the crown. They emerge in cathedrals, in manuscripts, in secret brotherhoods that claim descent from the fallen knights. It is as if the order had not perished but merely shed its armor, transforming into something unseen. The night of October 13th becomes legend, the birth of the superstition we still call Friday the 13th. Yet behind the legend lingers a riddle. What was it that frightened kings and popes more than heresy, more than rebellion? What secret was so dangerous it had to be erased from history itself? Perhaps it was not gold or relics or power. Perhaps it was knowledge, knowledge that could have changed everything the world believed about God, the Church, and the nature of humanity. As the last embers die in the courtyard, the smoke rises into the dawn sky like a silent vow. Somewhere, the memory of the Templars survives, in whispered prayers, in symbols carved into stone, in the restless question that has haunted centuries. What were the Knights of the Temple really protecting? The story of their fall is only the beginning. What lies buried beneath it may be the last crusade of all. One that was never fought with swords, but with secrets. 2 centuries before the fires of Paris, the world was a place of pilgrimage, of conquest, and of faith that burned hotter than the summer sun over Jerusalem. The year was 1095, and Europe had been rocked by rumors of atrocities against Christians in the Holy Land. Pope Urban II, standing on the steps of Clermont Cathedral, called forth a holy army, not just to reclaim Jerusalem, but to unite a fractured Christendom under a banner of divine purpose. Thousands answered, leaving homes, families, and the familiar earth of their villages for a promise of salvation and glory. Among them were knights, yes, but also simple men, merchants, and peasants, all willing to bleed and die in the name of God. The roads to the Levant were treacherous, lined with thieves, brigands, and disease. Many never made it, swallowed by deserts, ambushes, or the unforgiving seas. Yet the promise of pilgrimage and of defending the sacred tomb was enough to carry them forward. Amid this tide of devout warriors and desperate travelers, 9 men emerged with a vision unlike any other. They were not merely soldiers. They were monks, ascetics, and knights united under a singular purpose: to protect the pilgrims on their journey to the Holy Sepulchre. They took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, yet carried arms as their penance, believing that defense of the innocent was itself a sacred duty. The Order of the Poor Knights of Christ, soon known simply as the Templars, began in modest quarters near the Temple Mount, establishing a presence in Jerusalem that would reverberate across continents. Their mission, however, was deceptively simple on the surface. They offered safety on the roads to God's tomb, yet they were quietly weaving a network of influence and wealth that would dwarf kings and empires in the centuries to come. The pilgrims often wrote of their gratitude, describing knights clad in white mantles, the red cross sewn on their chests like a heartbeat against the fabric of war. These men carried not just swords, but the weight of sacred trust. Their early days were perilous. Bandits struck by night, and the deserts of the Levant claimed many who underestimated the journey. Yet the Templars endured, learning the harsh lessons of battle, negotiation, and survival. They became more than protectors. They became symbols, the living embodiment of God's presence in a world teetering between devotion and chaos. Each victory and each loss strengthened their reputation. Cities, seeing their discipline and commitment, opened their gates and entrusted them with wealth and property. From these small acts of faith and courage, the order began to grow in influence. By the middle of the 12th century, the Templars had transformed from humble guardians into a formidable military and political force. Their white mantles were no longer just a sign of purity, but a mark of authority. Kings sought their counsel, nobles feared their might, and the papacy increasingly relied on them to maintain a balance of power in a fractious world. They were entrusted with fortresses, castles, and entire regions, their banners raised where no other order dared to tread. But as their military prowess increased, so did the whispers. Rumors circulated about what the Templars were truly guarding. Pilgrims and chroniclers alike spoke of their vigilance over mysterious chambers, hidden archives, and sacred relics. Jerusalem, with all its temples, tombs, and ruins, became a stage for a drama of faith and secrecy, one that few dared to question openly. What were these knights looking for beneath the stones they defended so fiercely? The Order's rise was not merely martial. Their exposure to foreign lands and cultures endowed them with knowledge few in Europe possessed. They learned languages, codes of diplomacy, and the intricacies of finance. They began to function as bankers, storing wealth for kings and nobles, transferring funds across the Mediterranean without moving a single coin. Letters of credit, safe houses, and covert messengers became tools of their expanding empire. With each innovation, their power grew, drawing both admiration and envy. And yet, amidst this burgeoning influence, the original purpose of the Order, the protection of pilgrims, never completely faded. There remained an unspoken tension between their spiritual mission and their worldly authority, a duality that would define the Templars' fate for centuries. Stories of their deeds spread through Europe like wildfire. Accounts of sieges, miraculous defenses, and unwavering courage became legend. Pilgrims recounted instances where Templars held entire cities against overwhelming odds, their discipline and faith turning the tide of battles. Yet beyond the battlefield, their presence hinted at something more profound. They were custodians of knowledge and relics, a bridge between the mysteries of the East and the ambitions of Europe. Some chroniclers hinted at secret rituals, symbols carved in hidden chambers, and teachings reserved for the initiated. Though these accounts were vague and often dismissed by skeptics, they sowed the seeds of a mystique that would haunt the Order long after its military campaigns ended. The contrast between their vows of humility and the wealth they amassed did not go unnoticed. Observers whispered of corruption, of secret allegiances, of an agenda that went far beyond protection. Yet for every critic, there were countless who revered them as saints in armor. They were both feared and admired, misunderstood and idolized. This duality became the Templars' hallmark, a force of God outwardly, yet inwardly stewards of a secret no one else could grasp. Their lives were disciplined, yet lived on the knife's edge of suspicion and reverence, a delicate balance that would define their legacy. Even as Europe celebrated their victories, the Templars themselves remained enigmas. Few could penetrate their inner sanctum, where the Grand Master and his council deliberated over matters that transcended mere politics. It was said that they spoke of relics recovered in Jerusalem, items of immense spiritual power, perhaps even relics older than the church itself. They did not flaunt these possessions. They were locked away, protected by oaths deeper than any law. Pilgrims and kings alike could only speculate. What could be so valuable that it demanded such secrecy? And what might it cost to discover it? In the shadows of cathedrals and fortresses, the Templars' influence extended silently, touching every corner of Christendom while remaining largely unseen. By the end of the 12th century, the Order had achieved a paradoxical existence. Visible and invisible, celebrated and feared, devoted to God and yet enmeshed in worldly power. Their rise was meteoric, yet precarious. Each fortress held was a testament to their discipline, yet each secret they protected was a challenge to the very authorities who blessed their existence. The Templars had become more than a military order. They had become a living mystery, one whose threads would weave through the politics, faith, and legends of Europe for centuries to come. And as the Crusades raged on, the knights moved silently between holy cities, pilgrim roads, and the courts of kings, carrying with them a mission that few truly understood, a mission that was only beginning to reveal its consequences. By the time the 13th century dawned, the Templars were no longer merely the guardians of pilgrims. They were the arbiters of secrets, the holders of knowledge that could rival the power of kings. Their influence was unmatched, their mysteries profound, and their destiny, though unknown even to themselves, was inexorably entwined with the fate of Europe. The seeds planted in those early days of Jerusalem were growing into a force that would challenge both heaven and earth, a force whose final chapters would be written in fire, blood, and whispered secrets that endure to this day. On the Temple Mount, where the stones themselves seemed to hum with centuries of sacred memory, the early Templars established their first quarters. The site had been revered long before their arrival, its history stretching back to King Solomon and the construction of the original temple. To the faithful, it was a place of divine presence, To conquerors and crusaders, it was a prize. The Templars were given stewardship over a portion of the site, ostensibly to protect pilgrims and maintain order. But the men who knelt in white mantles quickly turned their gaze downward, to the stones beneath their feet. There were rumors, whispered among monks and scribes alike, that ancient vaults and forgotten tunnels lay beneath the ruins, places untouched for centuries, holding artifacts and knowledge of unimaginable power. It was here, in the shadow of sacred history, that the Templars' mission began to shift from mere protection to quiet excavation, from faith expressed in the sword to faith expressed in secrecy. The brothers moved with careful precision. By day, they maintained the roads and guarded the pilgrims. By night, some ventured into the temple's subterranean passages. Chroniclers spoke vaguely of these excursions. Strange lights in the dark, the echo of hammers and chisels, the distant scent of something old and metallic. Some claimed that the Templars discovered chambers lined with inscriptions in a language unknown to any living scholar, symbols etched deep into the stone that seemed to pulse with a strange energy. It was not gold they sought, not treasure in the ordinary sense, but something older, something that whispered of divine truths lost to time. Few outsiders could enter these secret spaces, and the brothers who did were sworn to silence under oath of blood, a vow more binding than any imposed by kings or popes. The question that haunted Jerusalem was simple yet profound. What could be hidden beneath the temple that demanded such secrecy? Some chroniclers speculated that the Templars had uncovered a relic of Solomon himself, perhaps the Ark of the Covenant or fragments of sacred texts that predated the Church. Others suggested something more esoteric, a repository of knowledge, a codex of forbidden wisdom that could challenge the very foundation of Christendom. The Templars themselves left few clues, though subtle hints in their architecture and symbols suggested a consciousness of something monumental, something that could alter the balance of spiritual and temporal power across Europe. Their work in the tunnels was not merely archaeological. The Templars moved as if following a hidden map, a sequence of chambers and passages aligned to sacred geometries lost to ordinary men. Certain stones were marked with symbols visible only to those trained in their secret rituals. Some scholars have suggested that these markers served as a guide to a deeper truth, perhaps even the location of a sacred object or knowledge. The Templars' methods were methodical, blending prayer with labor, ritual with excavation. Every hammer strike, every whispered incantation, seemed to echo a purpose that reached beyond the walls of Jerusalem itself. While they dug, the Templars also guarded the city with a vigilance unmatched by any other order. Bandits, rival factions, and enemy soldiers all tested the city's defenses. Yet the Templars stood unwavering. Their martial skill was legendary, but it was the combination of physical prowess and spiritual discipline that made them formidable. They seemed to operate on two planes at once, one visible to the world as knights and protectors, the other hidden as seekers of a truth older than Christendom itself. To ordinary pilgrims, they were saints in armor. To insiders, they were the keepers of a secret that would outlast kingdoms. By the time Jerusalem stabilized under Crusader control, the Templars had accumulated not only wealth and influence, but also a profound understanding of the city's hidden past. They mapped tunnels, recorded inscriptions, and cataloged relics with meticulous care. Some documents from the era hint at a treasure beyond gold, a phrase repeated with a reverence that suggested a power capable of transforming the world. Yet what exactly this treasure consisted of remains elusive. The secrecy surrounding it was absolute, protected by oaths that could not be broken without death, and by a discipline that left no room for error or betrayal. The Templars' work beneath the temple also shaped their outward identity. Their white mantles and red crosses became more than symbols of faith. They were markers of authority, of access to knowledge denied to others. Visitors to their quarters described a solemnity, a quiet intensity, as if the brothers carried in their very posture the weight of an unseen burden. Conversations among outsiders were tightly controlled, questions deflected, eyes averted. Even within the order, only a select few were allowed into the innermost chambers, those considered capable of understanding or surviving the knowledge contained therein. Legends began to circulate, even among those who had never entered the temple. Pilgrims whispered of tunnels that seemed to vanish into the earth, of doors that could not be opened by ordinary hands, of treasures guarded not by locks but by rituals and faith. Some claimed that the Templars had discovered a relic that held the key to divine insight, something that could reveal the mysteries of creation or even confer immortality of the spirit. Skeptics dismissed these tales, calling them fanciful or exaggerated, but the stories persisted, growing in richness and detail as they traveled back to Europe with pilgrims and merchants. As the Templars' influence in Jerusalem solidified, their work beneath the temple became a defining element of their identity. They were no longer merely protectors of the faithful. They were custodians of a mystery that stretched back into the mists of antiquity. The duality of their existence, visible warriors in the streets, secret seekers in the shadows, created a mystique that would follow them for centuries. Their actions beneath the stones of Solomon's temple laid the foundation for the power and fear that would one day provoke kings to betrayal, popes to excommunication, and the world to question whether these knights were servants of God or something altogether different. Even centuries later, the echoes of their work remain. Archaeologists, scholars, and mystics debate the purpose and extent of the Templars' excavations. Some point to cryptic carvings in cathedrals, others to manuscripts encoded with symbols that trace back to Jerusalem. Yet no one can say with certainty what was discovered beneath the temple. The tunnels themselves may have been destroyed, filled in, or sealed against time. But the memory of the Templars' pursuit, their unwavering devotion to a hidden truth, continues to inspire both awe and speculation. It is in this hidden work, beneath the ruins of a sacred past, that the true story of the order begins to reveal itself, not as mere knights or bankers, but as seekers of a knowledge that even kings feared to confront. The Templars' time beneath the Temple Mount was more than a chapter in their history. It was the crucible in which their destiny was forged. Every stone moved, every relic catalogued, every secret oath taken bound them not only to God, but to a path that would ultimately lead to confrontation, betrayal, and legend. The world would come to know their names through fire and accusation, but the secrets they unearthed, the knowledge they guarded, would remain untouchable, hidden beneath the earth, waiting for those daring enough or worthy enough to seek it. By the mid-12th century, whispers began to circulate among scholars, clerics, and the faithful about a discovery so profound that it would forever alter the perception of the Templars. According to obscure manuscripts and fragmented letters, the knights had unearthed a treasure hidden in the depths of Jerusalem's Temple Mount, a secret carefully shielded from both friend and foe. But this was no ordinary trove of gold, silver, or jewels. Chroniclers hint at something far older, something that predated Christianity itself, an artifact or knowledge so powerful that it could shift the balance of spiritual and temporal authority. Some speculated it was the Ark of the Covenant, a vessel said to hold divine fire. Others whispered of lost scrolls containing forbidden wisdom, secrets of creation, or even knowledge of God's own design. Whatever it was clear the Templars understood its significance, for they guarded it with a vigilance that bordered on obsession, cementing their role as custodians not just of pilgrims, but of a mystery that could shake empires. The accounts of their discovery are tantalizingly vague. Pilgrims returning to Europe spoke in hushed tones of knights entering chambers no ordinary man could find, of strange symbols etched into walls that glowed faintly in candlelight, and of relics encased in gold and silver yet emitting an aura far beyond material value. One letter describes the light of heaven captured within a box, though it gives no further explanation. Another recounts a crypt beneath the temple, sealed with a complex lock system of bronze and stone, in which the Templars performed rituals that seemed to blend prayer, alchemy, and geometry. These stories, passed quietly from traveler to scribe, hinted at a knowledge the Church itself might have found dangerous to acknowledge. And yet, the Templars' secrecy ensured that few could even verify the existence of such treasures, leaving their significance to imagination, legend, and speculation. The implications of this discovery were immense. An artifact or knowledge of divine origin could confer power far beyond the battlefield. Kings might owe their thrones not only to armies but to those who possessed the secret to divine favor. Popes might find their spiritual authority challenged. For what could they decree if the true mysteries of God were already held in the hands of the knights? And for the Templars themselves, this knowledge may have elevated their sense of purpose beyond mere protection of pilgrims. They were no longer just warriors or monks. They were stewards of a legacy that could define the course of history itself. The weight of such responsibility, coupled with the threat it posed to earthly authorities, inevitably set the stage for envy, fear, and eventual betrayal. Over the decades, as the Templars expanded their reach across Europe, their influence and wealth became legendary. Fortresses, castles, and commanderies rose under their name, serving as both centers of administration and repositories for the secrets they guarded. Their banking operations allowed kings to borrow vast sums, often beyond the ability of any single kingdom to repay, and yet the Templars managed these debts with an almost preternatural efficiency. While much of this wealth was material, some historians argue that the true treasure was never gold. Instead, it was the strategic advantage and the knowledge of the world they had quietly acquired, the ability to navigate politics, war, and commerce in ways others could not. And through it all, the shadow of the Temple Mount discovery loomed, shaping their decisions, their alliances, and their ultimate destiny. What makes this discovery particularly fascinating is the deliberate ambiguity maintained by the Templars themselves. Their records, both public and private, are frustratingly cryptic. Manuscripts speak of the light that cannot fade or the crown of wisdom hidden beneath the king's house. Phrases that ignite speculation but offer no concrete explanation. Some suggest these were metaphors for spiritual enlightenment. Others insist they were literal objects of power. The Templars were masters of secrecy, ensuring that only those initiated into the highest levels of the order could approach the truth. Even among themselves, knowledge was tiered, and access to the deepest mysteries required years of devotion, trial, and unquestioning loyalty. Such secrecy only fueled the imagination of outsiders, turning the Templars into figures of awe, suspicion, and legend. The discovery also had practical consequences. The Templars' formidable reputation was, in part, built on their ability to protect and utilize what they had found. Fortresses and vaults were not just military installations. They were safeguarding chambers, carefully designed to deter thieves, rival factions, and even the curious gaze of kings. Certain chambers were said to be aligned with the stars, with doors opening only under precise conditions, and inscriptions in forgotten languages served as keys to the uninitiated. The combination of sacred geometry, mystical ritual, and engineering ingenuity suggests that the Templars' treasure was far more than a simple artifact. It was a system, a network of knowledge and power encoded into the very architecture of their strongholds. Over time, scholars and treasure hunters have speculated endlessly about what the Templars truly found. Theories range from the Ark of the Covenant to secret Gnostic texts, from the Holy Grail to remnants of Solomon's original wisdom. Each theory carries its own weight of possibility and intrigue, yet none can be definitively proven. The allure lies not just in what was discovered, but in the lengths to which the Templars went to protect it. They were willing to endure exile, persecution, and death to ensure that this knowledge remained beyond the reach of those who might misuse it. This unwavering commitment suggests that whatever the treasure was, it was of an importance that transcended gold or earthly power, a force that could reshape faith, politics, and perhaps even human understanding itself. The consequences of this discovery would echo through centuries. When Philip IV of France eventually moved against the Templars, seizing their wealth and accusing them of heresy, the absence of tangible evidence of the treasure became part of the mystery. Kings may have expected to find gold and silver, yet what they encountered or failed to encounter was far more complex. Chroniclers hint that ships disappeared, vaults were emptied, and certain manuscripts vanished without a trace. To this day, historians debate whether the Templars managed to move their most precious secrets before the Order's fall, or whether the knowledge was deliberately concealed to survive in ways that remain hidden even now. Ultimately, the story of the Templars' secret discovery beneath the Temple Mount is not merely about what was found, but about the choices the Order made in its aftermath. They became stewards of a hidden knowledge that required cunning, discretion, and courage. Their rise in wealth, influence, and military prowess cannot be separated from this unseen treasure, for it shaped every decision, every alliance, and every risk they undertook. And it is precisely this secret, concealed in shadows and whispers, that has ensured the Templars' enduring mystique, a legacy that continues to captivate, mystify, and challenge our understanding of history. The discovery beneath the temple was more than a relic or artifact. It was the turning point that transformed a small group of warrior monks into one of the most powerful, enigmatic, and feared organizations in medieval Europe. In their hands, it became a force that could alter kingdoms, defy popes, and inspire legends that endure to this day. What they found in the stones of Jerusalem, and how they chose to protect it, remains one of history's most compelling mysteries. A mystery that continues to beckon the curious, the bold, and the imaginative toward questions whose answers may be forever beyond reach. As the Templars' influence in Jerusalem and across the Crusader states grew, so too did their accumulation of wealth. At first, it was the modest donations of grateful pilgrims, offerings made to sustain the Knights' mission of protection. But over time, the Templars became far more than a military order. They became the architects of one of the first international banking systems in the medieval world. Merchants and nobles learned to entrust their gold and valuables to the knights, confident that what they deposited in a Templar stronghold in Acre could be safely withdrawn in Paris, London, or Barcelona. Letters of credit, called letters of safe conduct, allowed money to flow across kingdoms without physical transport, shielding it from thieves and political instability. The Templars had created a network that combined the discipline of a military order with the precision of finance, a combination that made kings indebted to them, literally and figuratively, and made rivals suspicious of their power. The scale of their operations was staggering. Accounts suggest that the Templars handled sums so vast that the kings of Europe, accustomed to commanding armies and levying taxes, were often forced to negotiate with these monks as equals. Their vaults were said to hold enough treasure to sway the outcome of wars, fund crusades, and sustain the ambitions of monarchs. Yet gold alone does not explain the fear they inspired. Their true strength lay in their secrecy, their ability to move wealth, and, perhaps most significantly, their possession of knowledge, the very same knowledge they had uncovered beneath the Temple Mount. What they protected was both tangible and intangible, a combination of financial might and the invisible authority that comes from holding secrets the world does not understand. The Templars' rise as bankers did not occur in isolation. They established an extensive network of commanderies across Europe, each one a fortress and a bank, carefully designed to safeguard assets and manage operations. Merchants, knights, and even kings learned to rely on their services, depositing gold, receiving letters of credit, and making loans. While some accused them of greed, the Templars insisted that wealth was a means to an end, funding the protection of pilgrims, maintaining fortresses, and safeguarding the secrets entrusted to their care. Yet the more gold they accumulated, the more dangerous they became. Envy, suspicion, and fear followed in their wake, particularly from rulers like Philip IV of France, who found himself drowning in debt and frustrated by the Templars' growing independence. But the Templars' wealth was not merely financial. It was deeply symbolic. Every coin stored, every property acquired, and every loan extended reinforced their authority and power. Kings could command armies, but the Templars could move wealth across kingdoms, influence politics, and shape the outcomes of conflicts without ever drawing a sword. Their vaults were more than storage. They were repositories of influence, centers of intelligence, and instruments of strategy. The knights understood that material power alone could not secure their mission. True security came from controlling both the visible and the invisible. Armies and relics, gold and knowledge, loyalty and secrecy. In this sense, the Templars' banking system was not merely a financial innovation. It was an extension of their crusading mission, a way to sustain their influence long after the last battles in the Holy Land were fought. Legends soon grew around the treasures of the Templars, mixing fact with speculation. Chroniclers wrote of vaults brimming with gold, jewels, sacred relics, and manuscripts containing forbidden wisdom. Stories tell of ships vanishing with Templar treasure, of secret maps leading to hidden troves, and of coded documents that could unlock the mysteries of both heaven and earth. Whether all of this is true is impossible to say, yet the persistence of these tales speaks to the aura the Templars cultivated, or perhaps, the aura the world projected upon them. They were a force both feared and revered, capable of commanding obedience and suspicion in equal measure. Their financial genius, combined with their martial prowess and spiritual devotion, rendered them nearly untouchable, at least until envy and greed caught up with them. Even within the order, the management of wealth was not taken lightly. The Templars instituted rigorous audits, maintained meticulous records, and enforced strict discipline. Knights who misappropriated funds or violated vows faced severe consequences, both spiritual and temporal. Every coin, every ledger, every transaction was accounted for, a reflection of the order's philosophy that material wealth must serve a higher purpose. In this way, the Templars distinguished themselves from ordinary bankers or merchants. Their operations were bound by oaths, sanctified by ritual, and directed toward goals far beyond personal enrichment. Money was not the end. It was the means to maintain the order's independence, safeguard its secrets, and preserve the treasure they believed could change the world. The Templars' financial system also allowed them to extend their reach beyond the battlefield. They funded fortifications, built infrastructure, and supported crusades without relying solely on monarchs or the papacy. Their independence became a double-edged sword. On one hand, it enabled the order to act decisively in the service of its mission. On the other, it made them a target for kings who coveted their wealth or feared their influence. Philip IV of France, struggling to pay debts incurred by war, saw both opportunity and threat in the Templars. The wealth that had allowed the knights to protect pilgrims and expand their influence now made them a political liability in the eyes of a king whose ambitions exceeded his treasury. The accumulation of wealth also intensified the Templars' aura of secrecy and power. To ordinary Europeans, these monks seemed to possess abilities beyond comprehension. The ability to transport gold across continents safely, to lend vast sums to monarchs, and to vanish from one city and reappear in another with resources in hand. Their financial acumen, combined with rumors of secret treasures from the Temple Mount, fed a mystique that blurred the line between reality and legend. The Templars were no longer just knights. They were figures of awe, the embodiment of divine purpose manifest in both material and spiritual domains. Yet with every advantage came danger. Wealth, after all, is a temptation and power is a threat. Envy, suspicion, and fear festered in the courts of kings and in the halls of the church. The Templars' independence, their growing influence, and their possession of secrets both spiritual and financial made them targets long before Philip IV's fateful strike. And while the knights' discipline and oaths shielded them for decades, the seeds of betrayal were planted early. The very wealth and ingenuity that had elevated the Templars to their unmatched position also made them vulnerable to the jealousy and ambition of men who would stop at nothing to possess what they could not earn themselves. In retrospect, the Templars' financial empire was as much a weapon as any sword. It allowed them to project influence, to sustain their order, and to protect secrets that kings would later covet and fear. The combination of money, secrecy, and military prowess created a paradox. The more powerful they became, the more precarious their position in a world ruled by envy and ambition. The Templars were masters of finance and guardians of knowledge, yet it was precisely these qualities that set the stage for their dramatic fall centuries later. Their banking system was not just innovation. It was a testament to the vision of a group of men who understood that true power comes not only from swords, but from what you hold in the shadows, unseen, beyond the reach of those who would exploit it. Even as the Templars amassed wealth and influence across Europe, there remained an aspect of their identity that few outsiders could ever truly grasp: their faith and the hidden dimensions it had come to assume. To the world, they were devout Christian knights, sworn to God and to the protection of pilgrims. Their white mantles with the red cross symbolized purity, devotion, and courage. But within the order, their spiritual life had grown far more complex, layered with ritual, symbolism, and esoteric teachings that hinted at mysteries older than Christendom itself. Chroniclers and inquisitors would later accuse the Templars of heresy, devil worship, and secret rites, charges that seemed absurd given their public devotion. Yet there is reason to believe these allegations were neither entirely fabricated nor entirely false. They were accusations born of fear, misunderstanding, and perhaps glimpses of practices that even the Church itself could not interpret. Accounts suggest that some Templars engaged in meditative and initiatory practices that went far beyond the standard monastic discipline of prayer and fasting. Symbols, gestures, and ceremonies within the order were deliberately obscure to outsiders, designed to communicate truths only to those who had been carefully inducted into higher levels of understanding. The use of twin riders on a single horse, for example, became a recurring motif, a representation some scholars interpret as the duality of human nature. The mortal and the divine, the temporal and the eternal, the known and the hidden. Other symbols, skulls, serpents, and crosses carved in unusual forms, appear throughout Templar architecture and manuscripts, hinting at a symbolic language that communicated lessons of morality, power, and spiritual insight. Those who saw these signs without initiation might call them sinister or occult, but for the Templars, they were part of a spiritual curriculum designed to elevate the soul. Some historians argue that the Templars' hidden practices may have been influenced by knowledge encountered during the Crusades in the East. Jerusalem, with its layers of history, from the Temple of Solomon to the remnants of pagan and Jewish traditions, offered the Templars access to teachings, relics, and philosophies that had survived for centuries. Contact with scholars, monks, and mystics from diverse religious traditions could have inspired the integration of esoteric knowledge into their rituals. While the order remained outwardly Christian, it is plausible that their inner circle preserved interpretations and symbols that explored the mysteries of creation, divine wisdom, and the hidden relationship between heaven and earth. To outsiders, these practices may have appeared heretical, but to the Templars, they were a form of devotion, a disciplined exploration of faith beyond the literal words of Scripture. The tension between public orthodoxy and private knowledge defined the Templars' identity. They maintained strict adherence to Christian liturgy, presented themselves as paragons of virtue, and undertook vows of obedience, chastity, and poverty. Yet beneath this surface, they cultivated a knowledge that was deliberately concealed. Initiation into the deepest mysteries of the order required years of service, unwavering loyalty, and the ability to comprehend symbolic teachings that could challenge conventional understanding of God, power, and human destiny. This secrecy was essential, not just to protect the Templars from persecution, but to shield the sacred knowledge they possessed from misuse by those who were not spiritually or morally prepared to wield it. It was this hidden dimension of faith that likely drew the suspicion of both secular and religious authorities. Kings, threatened by the Templars' independence and wealth, could not understand the purpose of their secrecy. Popes, despite granting privileges and protection, must have sensed that the order operated with a layer of authority and insight beyond their control. Inquisition records later claimed that the Templars worshipped idols and performed blasphemous rites. While these claims were often extracted under torture or coercion, modern scholars suggest they may reflect distorted accounts of Templar ritual. Symbolic enactments meant to convey spiritual truths, misunderstood and sensationalized by outsiders. The line between heresy and mysticism, between ritual and legend, was often blurred, particularly when a secret society held both wealth and sacred authority. One of the most intriguing aspects of Templar faith is the suggestion that they explored the union of opposites. The twin riders, the serpent entwined with the cross, the juxtaposition of skulls and roses, all suggest a philosophy concerned with life and death, material and spiritual, known and hidden. This duality was reflected not only in their symbolism but in their daily lives. They were warriors and monks, bankers and mystics, public servants and secret guardians. Their rituals often incorporated elements of meditation, numerology, and sacred geometry, suggesting that their devotion was as much about internal enlightenment as it was about external service. Some scholars believe that the Templars saw the divine not only in scripture or prayer, but in patterns, symbols, and the hidden architecture of the world itself. Legends hint at further esoteric knowledge. Accounts speak of relics with powers beyond comprehension, crypts lined with inscriptions from ancient civilizations, and sacred texts that contain truths the Church had long suppressed. Whether these stories are myth or reality, they reinforce the notion that the Templars' faith was multidimensional. They were not merely Christians in armor. They were seekers of hidden wisdom, bridging the gap between the spiritual and material worlds. Their public devotion was inseparable from their private quest for enlightenment, a quest that demanded secrecy, discipline, and courage. The consequences of this hidden faith were profound. It shaped the Templars' decision-making, their alliances, and their approach to both power and knowledge. It informed the way they conducted banking, fought battles, and administered justice. The moral and spiritual rigor required to maintain access to these secrets may explain why the Templars remained so cohesive and effective for centuries, even as they faced enemies far larger and more powerful than themselves. The inner mysteries provided purpose, cohesion, and resilience, a guiding principle that extended beyond the reach of kings or popes. Yet, it was this very dimension of faith, the combination of secrecy, power, and esoteric knowledge, that would eventually make the Templars a target. As their influence grew, so too did the envy, fear, and suspicion of rulers and church authorities. The deeper truths they guarded, combined with their wealth and independence, made them appear not merely as servants of God, but as potential rivals to the earthly authority of kings and popes. And it is this delicate tension, their devotion and their secrecy, their power and their humility, that defines the enduring fascination of the Templars. They were warriors, bankers, monks, and mystics, bound together not only by oath but by the pursuit of hidden truths that challenged the boundaries of human understanding. In the end, the Templars' hidden faith was more than ritual or superstition. It was a framework through which they understood the world and their place in it. It allowed them to navigate the complex intersections of power, devotion, and secrecy. It inspired courage in battle, discipline in administration, and patience in guarding secrets that could alter history. It is within this hidden dimension, more than in their wealth or martial skill, that the essence of the order resides. A brotherhood devoted not only to God, but to the pursuit of wisdom and truth that remained inaccessible to all but the most faithful and initiated. Their faith was their sword, their shield, and their guide, a beacon in the darkness of a world that often could not comprehend the depths of their devotion. As the Templars' influence spread from the Holy Land to the courts and countrysides of Europe, their military reputation became as formidable as their financial prowess. Chronicles from the period describe them as an unstoppable force on the battlefield, disciplined beyond comparison, and feared by both Muslim and Christian forces alike. Their white mantles, marked with the Red Cross, became a symbol not just of faith, but of absolute martial authority. Yet what made them truly unique was not simply their skill with the sword, but the way they combined strategy, intelligence, and the element of fear to maintain dominance. They were more than soldiers, they were architects of war, carefully calculating every move, every alliance, every fortress held. Their operations were a symphony of coordination, logistics, and ruthless precision. In battles across the Levant, the Templars were often the difference between victory and defeat. They were expert cavalry, their charges capable of breaking enemy lines, but their true power lay in their unity and discipline. Knights trained from childhood in both martial and spiritual discipline moved as one body, their actions coordinated to the smallest detail. Siege warfare became their specialty. They built, reinforced, and defended castles with an almost scientific rigor. Each fortress served not only a defensive purpose but also as a base of intelligence gathering and political control. Through careful placement of troops, scouts, and informants, the Templars created a network of influence that extended far beyond the battlefield. To enemy commanders, they were an enigma, an invisible hand directing the tides of war with unerring precision. Their campaigns were often brutal yet calculated. The Templars understood that warfare was not merely a matter of honor, but of survival, faith, and control. Pilgrims depended on their protection, territories depended on their vigilance, and even kings relied on their military might to assert authority in unstable regions. Yet the knights were not indiscriminate in their violence. Their discipline allowed them to execute strategies that minimized chaos while maximizing effectiveness. Chroniclers describe instances where they successfully defended entire cities against overwhelming forces, employing both defensive fortifications and preemptive strikes to maintain order. Their reputation for fearlessness became legendary, yet it was matched by their reputation for prudence and careful calculation. Beyond the battlefield, the Templars functioned as intelligence agents, diplomats, and negotiators. They gathered information on enemy movements, political alliances, and economic conditions, often influencing decisions made by kings and sultans alike. Their knowledge of terrain, supply routes, and enemy strategy made them invaluable assets not just to the Crusader states, but to European monarchs who relied on them to maintain dominance abroad. Letters and chronicles indicate that the Order's influence extended far beyond what could be measured by the number of soldiers alone. They shaped the outcomes of wars through insight, foresight, and careful manipulation of resources and information. Yet even as their power and reputation grew, the Templars faced enemies who sought to undermine them. Rival orders, envious lords, and ambitious monarchs watched the Knights rise with suspicion. Stories of betrayal, espionage, and intrigue became commonplace. The Order had learned to adapt, using a combination of secrecy, diplomacy, and strategic alliances to survive. They built fortified commanderies not only to store wealth and relics, but also to serve as centers of negotiation and intelligence. Each stronghold was designed to project power and maintain control, even in the absence of the full force of their army. The Templars understood that the perception of invincibility was often as important as actual strength. Within the Order, training and discipline were relentless. Young squires were taught not only martial skills, but also the codes of conduct, loyalty, and spiritual devotion that would govern their lives. Knights were constantly tested in exercises designed to push their limits, forging men capable of enduring extreme hardship without losing focus or morale. This rigorous preparation ensured that the Templars remained effective even when isolated or outnumbered. Their cohesion was legendary. In a world where loyalty was often fleeting, the Templars' bond was absolute. Stories recount knights defending comrades to the death, maintaining formations even in the face of annihilation, and executing complex strategies without hesitation. The Templars' military organization was also remarkably advanced for its time. Command structures were clear, with each knight understanding his role, duties, and responsibilities. Communication within and between fortresses was efficient, relying on messengers, signals, and prearranged codes. Logistics, often the undoing of armies in the medieval era, were meticulously planned. Supplies, horses, and weaponry were managed with precision, ensuring that even remote outposts could sustain themselves during extended sieges. In many ways, the Templars functioned as a hybrid of army, intelligence network, and monastic order, each element reinforcing the other to create a force far greater than the sum of its parts. However, their military success was inseparable from the secrets they protected. It is likely that the knowledge and artifacts gathered from Jerusalem played a subtle yet significant role in their campaigns. Rumors of sacred relics, hidden treasures, and arcane wisdom suggest that the Templars' strategies may have been informed not only by skill, but also by an understanding of symbols, rituals, and intelligence lost to outsiders. Whether through spiritual insight, coded intelligence, or practical experience, the Order's ability to anticipate enemy movements and act decisively contributed to their fearsome reputation. Knights who fought under the Templar banner were not simply trained soldiers. They were participants in a mission that combined faith, strategy, and a hidden purpose that extended beyond immediate military objectives. Despite their reputation as warriors, the Templars also understood the power of diplomacy. They negotiated truces, brokered alliances, and mediated disputes, often acting as impartial agents in a chaotic political landscape. Their dual identity as monks and soldiers allowed them to move between spiritual and secular spheres with authority. Rulers respected their judgment, enemies feared their reach, and pilgrims relied on their protection. Each action on the battlefield or in the council chamber was informed by a broader understanding of power, influence, and the unseen currents shaping the medieval world. Yet this combination of martial skill, intelligence, and hidden knowledge was a double-edged sword. While it allowed the Templars to achieve extraordinary victories and maintain their independence, it also attracted envy, fear, and suspicion. Kings coveted their wealth, popes questioned their authority, and rivals plotted their downfall. The very qualities that made the Order so effective, discipline, secrecy, and the possession of knowledge beyond comprehension, would ultimately contribute to the dramatic and violent betrayal that history would remember. The Templars' military prowess was inseparable from the myth and fear that surrounded them, and this reputation would play a pivotal role in their eventual confrontation with the forces of political ambition and religious authority. In the end, the Templars' mastery of war was not merely physical but intellectual, spiritual, and strategic. They were warriors of God, yes, but they were also thinkers, planners, and secret keepers. Their ability to blend faith with martial skill, intelligence with secrecy, and discipline with adaptability allowed them to dominate battlefields, fortresses, and mines alike. To understand the Templars is to understand that their power was never just in the sword. It was in the combination of all they wielded: knowledge, faith, money, strategy, and the mysteries they protected from the world. It is this interplay of elements that elevated them from mere knights to legends, and ultimately set the stage for the dramatic downfall that would one day cast their names into both infamy and eternal fascination. Beyond the battlefield, the Templars' influence extended into the very courts of kings, the halls of palaces, and the chambers of power where the fates of nations were decided. Their wealth, military discipline, and knowledge made them not just knights, but arbiters of influence in a world where the balance of power was fragile and often shifting. Monarchs, even the most powerful, came to rely on them, not simply for protection, but for counsel. Their role was unprecedented. A religious order that wielded both spiritual authority and temporal power, a combination that was as rare as it was dangerous. To kings and popes alike, they were both an invaluable asset and a source of unease. Across France, England, and the Holy Roman Empire, the Templars established commanderies that functioned as centers of administration, finance, and intelligence. Here, knights trained not only in arms but in negotiation, diplomacy, and strategy. They observed the movements of merchants, armies, and rival factions, sending detailed reports back to the Grand Master. Their network of information rivaled that of any sovereign state, yet it remained largely invisible to the outside world. This dual capacity, military might and covert intelligence, made the Templars a formidable presence. Kings who sought to undermine them quickly realized the order's reach was too extensive to challenge directly, yet its accumulation of power planted the seeds of envy and suspicion that would later bloom into outright hostility. The Templars' involvement in politics was often subtle, exercised through influence rather than overt domination. They brokered alliances between warring nobles, advised rulers on strategy, and sometimes intervened to protect territories or populations at risk. Letters and chronicles suggest that Templar envoys moved freely between courts, often negotiating with skill that surpassed even the most seasoned diplomats. Yet their motives were not purely self-serving. The order saw itself as a moral and spiritual authority, guiding rulers in the direction of justice and divine favor. Still, the perception of their independence, combined with the aura of secrecy surrounding their inner workings, made them appear untouchable, almost above the law. This perception, while advantageous, would eventually contribute to their downfall. It was in France, however, that the Templars' growing power collided most dramatically with royal ambition. Philip IV, known as Philip the Fair, had inherited a kingdom rich in potential but crippled by debt. Wars had drained the treasury, and the crown's coffers were empty. The Templars, with their immense wealth, extensive banking network, and influence over nobles and monarchs alike, became both a target and a temptation. Philip understood that direct confrontation with the Church was dangerous, yet the Templars, in his eyes, embodied the very threat of an independent power capable of undermining royal authority. Every letter of credit, every fortified commandery, and every whispered secret held by the knights was a reminder of a challenge the king could not ignore. Rumors and accusations began to circulate, carefully cultivated or perhaps opportunistically amplified by Philip's court. Chroniclers report that charges of heresy, blasphemy, and secret worship were leveled against the Templars long before their final arrest. Tales of idols, forbidden rites, and ritual corruption spread like wildfire, sowing doubt among both the populace and the clergy. While modern historians often point to political and financial motivations as the primary driver, it is worth noting that the fear surrounding the Templars was not purely material. Their secrecy, their knowledge of hidden truths, and their influence over both secular and spiritual affairs made them appear as an almost supernatural threat to earthly authority. Despite these growing tensions, the Templars remained outwardly faithful to the Church. Their daily lives were filled with prayer, ritual, and service. They maintained monasteries, chapels, and hospitals. They defended pilgrims. They carried out missions across Europe and the Holy Land. Their public devotion was impeccable, leaving little room for legitimate accusations of wrongdoing. Yet it was precisely this combination of public piety and private authority that unnerved kings and popes alike. A religious order that could operate independently of both secular and ecclesiastical control represented a form of power that few rulers could tolerate, particularly a king as ambitious and financially desperate as Philip. The tension reached a climax in the early 14th century. Philip, desperate to consolidate his authority and eliminate debts, turned his focus toward the Templars. He orchestrated a carefully planned operation, coordinating arrests across France with shocking precision. Knights were seized in the dead of night, often by forces loyal to the crown rather than the Church. They were imprisoned, tortured, and coerced into confessions of blasphemy and heresy. The spectacle was both dramatic and calculated. It demonstrated the king's power, intimidated potential dissenters, and allowed Philip to seize the order's considerable wealth. Yet even in the face of betrayal, the Templars remained disciplined. Many refused to confess to crimes they had not committed, enduring torture with remarkable fortitude. Their resilience only reinforced the sense of awe and fear surrounding them, further fueling the perception that the order possessed hidden knowledge or powers that mere kings could not comprehend. The collapse of the Templars in France was swift, but the effects were felt throughout Europe. Commanderies were raided, treasures confiscated, and records destroyed. Yet even in defeat, the order's influence could not be entirely erased. Stories of hidden wealth, secret vaults, and surviving knights spread across the continent. Legends of sacred relics, mysterious documents, and unknown knowledge persisted, tantalizing historians, treasure hunters, and conspiracy theorists for centuries. In many ways, the Templars had ensured the survival of their mystique. They had become a symbol not only of military and financial power, but of secrets that defied authority and transcended time. The Templars' political influence, like their military prowess, was inseparable from the mystery they cultivated. Kings feared them not only because of the armies they commanded or the gold they controlled, but because of what was unknown. The secrets they kept, the knowledge they possessed, and the network of loyalty and information that extended across kingdoms. To challenge the Templars was to confront forces that were visible only in part, a challenge both dangerous and destabilizing. Their existence blurred the line between spiritual devotion, worldly authority, and hidden wisdom, creating a combination that few could navigate successfully. Ultimately, the Templars' role in politics illustrates the complex interplay of power, secrecy, and faith. They were warriors, bankers, and diplomats, yet they were also guardians of knowledge that made them untouchable and dangerous in the eyes of ambitious rulers. Their independence allowed them to shape events, influence decisions, and protect what they considered sacred. But it was this very independence, combined with their unparalleled wealth and mysterious reputation, that sowed the seeds of their eventual downfall. In understanding their political influence, one begins to grasp why kings and popes would move against them with such calculated determination, and why the legend of the Templars continues to captivate the imagination centuries later. The Templars' story in the courts of kings is, therefore, not simply a tale of influence or ambition. It is a testament to the power of knowledge, secrecy, and devotion. Their ability to navigate politics while maintaining their independence, protecting their treasures, and pursuing their hidden mission demonstrates a level of sophistication and foresight unparalleled in medieval history. It is this combination of attributes that allowed them to dominate both the battlefield and the corridors of power, setting the stage for a confrontation that would shake Europe to its core and leave a legacy of mystery, intrigue, and legend that endures to this day. The shadow of the Templars' fall began to loom long before the first arrests were made. Across Europe, rumors swirled about secret vaults, hidden libraries, and knowledge so profound that it threatened the established order of kings and popes alike. Chronicles from the period speak of manuscripts containing forbidden wisdom, relics of unimaginable sanctity, and objects that radiated a power beyond comprehension. These whispers were often dismissed by historians as exaggeration, yet their persistence suggests that there was truth behind the tales. The Templars had uncovered something, safeguarded it, and integrated it into a network of influence, secrecy, and devotion that would outlast their physical order. The question haunting Europe was the same question that continues to intrigue historians today. What was the true nature of the treasure they protected, and why was it so dangerous that it had to be hidden from the world? In the years leading up to the arrests, the Templars operated with a dual identity that few could penetrate. On one hand, they were knights, bankers, and administrators, visible and accountable to the church and the monarchs who benefited from their services. On the other, they were guardians of secrets, moving along hidden corridors of influence that were incomprehensible to outsiders. This duality created both power and vulnerability. Those who saw only the surface, the wealth, the fortresses, the knights in white mantles, admired and feared them. Those who glimpsed the hidden layers, the manuscripts, crypts, and relics, sometimes acted out of fear, sometimes out of ambition, setting the stage for betrayal. The Templars' secretive practices had evolved over decades. Chronicles hint at hidden libraries filled with texts in unknown languages, crypts lined with inscriptions from civilizations long vanished, and artifacts that were not merely sacred but symbolic, holding knowledge encoded in design, geometry, and ritual. Some scholars have argued that these were metaphors for spiritual teachings, while others believe they were tangible objects of immense historical and religious significance. The Templars' insistence on secrecy meant that only a select few knew the full extent of their discoveries. Initiates were tested not only in martial skill, but in their capacity for understanding, discretion, and moral fortitude. Those who were unworthy or unprepared were denied access, ensuring that the deepest knowledge remained shielded from misuse. As rumors spread, suspicion naturally followed. Kings, who owed debts to the Templars and had relied on their counsel, began to see the order's independence as a threat. Philip IV of France, in particular, perceived the Knights' combination of wealth, influence, and secret knowledge as a direct challenge to his authority. The decision to move against the Templars was not spontaneous. It was the culmination of decades of tension, jealousy, and fear. Philip's advisors encouraged him to act, framing the order as heretical and blasphemous, charges that would justify arrests, trials, and confiscation of assets. The allegations, ranging from idol worship to secret rituals, were likely distorted or fabricated, but they tapped into a pervasive unease about the Templars' hidden dimension. By portraying the order as dangerous not only politically but spiritually, Philip secured support from factions that might otherwise have resisted his actions. When the arrests began on October 13, 1307, the sweep was devastatingly precise. Knights across France were seized simultaneously, often by royal forces rather than church officials, ensuring that no one could warn their brethren. Inquisitors and interrogators, backed by the threat of torture, sought confessions to the most sensational of charges. Some knights, facing unimaginable pain, confessed to crimes they had not committed. Others held their silence with remarkable fortitude. Letters from the period describe scenes of fear, betrayal, and despair, yet also of unwavering loyalty. Even in chains, the knights maintained a discipline and composure that furthered the legend of their courage and commitment. Their resistance, both physical and spiritual, reinforced the aura of mystery that surrounded the order. The trials that followed were as much a theater of power as a search for justice. Records indicate that interrogation was systematic, and confessions were extracted under duress. While many knights admitted to fantastical and impossible acts, modern historians recognize that these admissions were the result of torture and coercion rather than truth. Yet even the fabricated charges reveal the fears and obsessions of the accusers. The allegations, ritualistic desecration, secret oaths, and worship of hidden idols, suggest that the Templars' secrecy had long inspired suspicion. What outsiders could not understand, they often feared, and the very mystique that had once protected the order now became its undoing. Beyond the courts and prisons, the fate of the Templars' treasures became a matter of both practical and symbolic importance. Philip seized property, gold, and artifacts, yet chroniclers suggest that not all the order's holdings were accounted for. Ships disappeared with cargoes, vaults were found empty, and manuscripts vanished. Some historians argue that the Templars may have anticipated the fall and moved their most precious possessions to secure locations, ensuring that knowledge and sacred relics survived even if the knights themselves did not. Whether through cunning, foresight, or divine guidance, the order left behind fragments of their legacy that would fuel legends for centuries to come. The impact of the Templars' arrest extended beyond France. Across Europe, other monarchs watched the events unfold with alarm or opportunistic curiosity. Some sought to seize Templar assets in their own territories, while others distanced themselves to avoid conflict with the Church or with Philip. The order, once unified and powerful, found its network fractured. Yet even in decline, the Templars' influence persisted. The mystique surrounding their knowledge, wealth, and discipline ensured that their story would not end with imprisonment or execution. Across the continent, rumors persisted of hidden vaults, secret rituals, and surviving knights who carried the order's deepest secrets into exile. The fall of the Templars serves as a stark reminder of the intersection between secrecy, power, and fear. Their combination of military discipline, financial acumen, spiritual depth, and hidden knowledge created a force that was extraordinary in medieval Europe. Yet these same qualities made them a target when ambition, envy, and political calculation converged. The order's collapse was not merely the result of legal action. It was the culmination of decades of tension between what was visible and what was hidden, between the ordinary and the extraordinary, between power understood and power feared. Even centuries later, the Templars' legacy is defined by the tension between fact and legend. Scholars continue to debate the extent of their discoveries beneath the Temple Mount, the secrets they safeguarded, and the treasures they possessed. Treasure hunters, historians, and mystics have speculated endlessly, attempting to reconstruct what the order may have held, what was lost, and what survived in secret. The fascination endures because the Templars' story is not only about martial prowess or wealth, but about the human desire to seek, protect, and understand knowledge that lies beyond the reach of ordinary perception. In reflecting on the Templars' fall, one sees both tragedy and enduring power. They were betrayed by kings, condemned by popes, and persecuted by those who could not comprehend the depths of their mission. Yet the order's legacy survives in architecture, manuscripts, legends, and the enduring mystery of their treasures and secrets. Their story is a testament to the resilience of knowledge and devotion, a reminder that what is hidden often wields influence far beyond what is immediately visible. The Templars' mystique, born of secrecy and sustained by courage, continues to inspire awe, curiosity, and speculation, a narrative that refuses to be confined by the limits of time or history. Even as the arrests and trials of the Templars unfolded across France, whispers began to spread across Europe of knights who had vanished without a trace, treasures that had disappeared, and documents that had been spirited away under cover of darkness. It became increasingly clear that the order's reach and influence could not be entirely extinguished by the king's decree or the pope's sanction. Some argued that the surviving Templars went underground, blending into society, taking new identities, and carrying with them knowledge that had been carefully guarded for generations. Others believed that the secrets of the order, its wealth, relics, and possibly even sacred knowledge, had been hidden in locations so remote and secure that only the initiates could ever hope to retrieve them. The fall of the order, while spectacular and devastating, was not the end of the Templars' story. It was merely the beginning of a legend that would endure for centuries. Across the Mediterranean, rumors of hidden ships carrying treasure circulated. Chroniclers spoke of vessels departing from ports under the cover of night, loaded with gold, manuscripts, and relics whose significance was known only to the knights themselves. These accounts are tantalizingly vague, offering tantalizing fragments of evidence without ever providing confirmation. Were these ships real, or merely legends born from fear and imagination? Modern historians debate this endlessly, but the persistence of such tales suggests a kernel of truth. The Templars were meticulous in their efforts to safeguard the fruits of decades of discovery and service. Their meticulous planning, secrecy, and foresight ensured that even in the face of unprecedented persecution, the Order's most prized possessions might survive. The question of what exactly was preserved remains one of history's most compelling mysteries. Chroniclers and later authors have speculated that the Templars safeguarded relics of enormous religious significance. Fragments of the True Cross, sacred vessels used in the earliest Christian rites, and manuscripts containing knowledge suppressed by the Church. Some traditions even suggest that the Knights possessed secrets related to the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, or ancient wisdom that predated Christianity itself. While these claims cannot be verified, they point to the enduring perception that the Templars were not ordinary warriors or monks, but custodians of knowledge and power that few could comprehend or access. Surviving members of the Order likely sought refuge in regions beyond the reach of Philip IV's agents. Portugal, Scotland, and parts of Spain have long been associated with Templar activity after the fall, with local records indicating that knights may have been welcomed and integrated into other orders or communities. These men, bound by oath and secrecy, carried with them the knowledge, discipline, and possibly the treasures of the Order. The continuity of Templar practices in these regions, rituals, architectural motifs, and symbols, suggests that the spirit of the Order persisted, even if its formal structure had been dismantled. The dispersal of the Templars' wealth and knowledge also fueled the rise of speculation, conspiracy, and legend. Generations of treasure hunters, historians, and mystics have searched for signs of hidden Templar vaults, secret manuscripts, and artifacts of immense spiritual and historical significance. Some claim that the Order's influence extended into secret societies, Freemasonry, and other organizations that preserved esoteric knowledge through coded rituals and symbolism. Whether these connections are real, symbolic, or coincidental, they underscore the powerful impression that the Templars left on the European imagination, a mixture of awe, fear, and curiosity that refuses to fade. The psychological impact of the Templars' disappearance cannot be overstated. In a society governed by feudal loyalties, the sudden removal of an organization that combined spiritual authority, martial prowess, and financial influence created a void that destabilized both the political and religious landscape. Kings who had relied on the Order to enforce agreements, secure borders, and manage funds found themselves vulnerable. Popes, who had once granted the Templars privileges and protection, had to contend with the consequences of their disappearance and the uncertainty of what had been lost or hidden. The Templars' absence reshaped power dynamics across Europe, leaving room for ambition, intrigue, and new alliances. Perhaps the most enduring aspect of the post-Templar period is the legend of survival. Tales of knights living in secrecy, passing on knowledge to trusted successors, and guarding relics against discovery became part of folklore. Accounts describe hidden chambers, subterranean passageways, and cryptic messages left in architecture and manuscripts, meant to guide the worthy toward what had been concealed. Whether these stories are literal truth, allegorical warning, or symbolic mythology, they perpetuate the sense that the Templars' influence extends far beyond what is visible in historical records. The Order's disappearance from the public eye did not erase its impact. It merely transformed it into something subtler, more enigmatic, and more enduring. The fall of the Templars also had profound implications for the idea of knowledge as power. In a world where kings wielded armies and popes claimed spiritual authority, the Templars demonstrated that hidden knowledge could rival or surpass both. Their ability to combine intelligence, esoteric understanding, and material resources created a force that was incomprehensible to many contemporaries and terrifying to those in power. Even in defeat, the legacy of this understanding persisted, shaping perceptions of power, secrecy, and influence in Europe for generations. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Templar survival is the interplay between reality and myth. Historians can trace the dispersal of knights, the seizure of wealth, and the confiscation of property. Yet there remains a space between documented events and speculation, a liminal zone where treasure, relics, and secrets may still exist, hidden in plain sight or buried beneath layers of history. This space has fueled imagination, scholarship, and adventure alike, inspiring countless explorations, literary works, and theories that attempt to uncover what the Templars may have truly safeguarded. Even centuries later, the question remains, what was so valuable that the order endured, in spirit and secrecy, beyond its physical destruction? Was it material wealth, sacred relics, lost wisdom, or a combination of all three? Perhaps more importantly, what does the persistence of these legends tell us about human fascination with mystery, secrecy, and the unknown? The Templars' story challenges us to consider the power of knowledge protected in shadow, the endurance of devotion, and the consequences of fear and envy when confronted with something beyond comprehension. In reflecting on the aftermath of the Order's fall, one sees not just tragedy, but also remarkable resilience. While the Templars as an organization ceased to exist, their influence, symbols, and mysteries endured. Architecture, manuscripts, and oral tradition preserved fragments of their legacy. The enduring fascination with hidden treasures, secret rituals, and unexplained knowledge is a testament to the profound impact the Templars had on European society. Their disappearance created space for myth, legend, and speculation to flourish. A reminder that the most powerful legacies are not always those that are visible, but those that persist in secrecy, imagination, and memory. Ultimately, the dispersal and survival of the Templars illustrate the enduring tension between power and secrecy, knowledge and authority. They demonstrate that influence is not confined to armies, wealth, or titles, but can reside in what is hidden, carefully protected, and understood by few. The knights who vanished after 1307 may have been physically defeated, but the knowledge, discipline, and mystery they carried continued to shape history in ways that remain tantalizingly elusive. In this sense, the Templars were never truly gone. They were transformed, enduring as symbols of the unseen, the unknown, and the unknowable, leaving a legacy that continues to captivate and confound even centuries later. Even as the Templars vanished from the streets and castles of Europe, their influence persisted in subtle and unexpected ways, woven into the fabric of society, politics, and culture. Surviving knights were rumored to have integrated into other military orders, local militias, or monastic communities, carrying with them the discipline, knowledge, and perhaps the sacred secrets that had defined their lives. In Portugal, some were absorbed into the Order of Christ, an organization that retained the Templar symbols, architectural motifs, and financial acumen. In Scotland, legends suggest that knights found refuge among sympathetic nobles, passing on their teachings and guarding hidden treasures with unwavering loyalty. These dispersed fragments of the order ensured that, even in defeat, the Templars' legacy was not extinguished. It had merely become less visible, operating in the shadows, and enduring in secret. The Templars' legacy also extended to architecture and urban planning. Commanderies and fortresses constructed by the order were marvels of engineering, blending defensive utility with symbolic design. Some structures incorporated hidden chambers, secret passages, and cryptic inscriptions, suggesting an esoteric dimension to their work. Modern researchers have noted that these architectural elements may have served multiple purposes: practical defense, concealment of treasures, and the transmission of knowledge through symbolism. Buildings like the Fortress of Tomar in Portugal, or various Templar constructions in France and Spain, bear evidence of sophisticated planning that reflects both martial ingenuity and a deep understanding of geometry and spatial symbolism. These physical remnants serve as enduring testimony to the Order's foresight and mastery, surviving long after its knights were scattered or executed. Manuscripts and documents, too, played a critical role in preserving Templar influence. Though many were confiscated or destroyed during the trials, it is likely that some were hidden, smuggled out of France, or safeguarded by sympathetic allies. References to codices, maps, and treatises hint at knowledge that ranged from advanced banking and military strategy to esoteric philosophy and spiritual insight. Some researchers argue that these texts contained cryptic information about sacred relics, ancient civilizations, or methods of safeguarding power and knowledge. While much of this remains speculative, the persistence of these stories suggests that the Templars' intellectual and spiritual legacy was never entirely erased. Even fragments, carefully protected and interpreted by select initiates, could have profound implications, reinforcing the perception of the Order as custodians of secrets too dangerous or powerful to be widely known. The Templars' survival in secret also had psychological and cultural implications. In the wake of their fall, their mystique grew, fueled by fear, rumor, and fascination. Artists, chroniclers, and storytellers portrayed them as both heroic and dangerous, as men capable of transcending ordinary human limits through discipline, devotion, and access to hidden knowledge. Legends of surviving knights, hidden treasure, and secret rituals transformed the Templars into a symbol of mystery that extended far beyond historical reality. This transformation was reinforced by the political and religious context of the time. Monarchs sought to consolidate power, the Church sought to assert control, and ordinary people found in the Templars a story of devotion, betrayal, and the unknown. The interplay of myth and history created a narrative that continues to captivate imaginations even in the modern era. One of the most intriguing aspects of the post-Templar era is the suggestion that their knowledge and practices influenced other secretive societies and movements. Some historians and researchers posit connections between surviving Templars and later organizations, such as the Freemasons. Architectural symbols, ritual elements, and codes of conduct observed in Freemasonry bear striking similarities to Templar practices, leading some to speculate that remnants of the Order's philosophy and knowledge were transmitted through these networks. Whether these connections are direct or symbolic, they underscore the enduring impact of Templar ideals. The fusion of discipline, secrecy, morality, and the pursuit of knowledge. In this way, the Templars' legacy extends not only through history but through cultural memory, influencing societies that value secrecy, ritual, and esoteric understanding. The financial acumen of the Templars also left a lasting mark. Their banking systems, letters of credit, and methods of securing wealth across borders were revolutionary in medieval Europe. Even after the Order's dissolution, many of these innovations influenced later banking practices, trade networks, and financial governance. Kings and nobles who had relied on Templar systems were forced to find alternatives, often adopting or adapting techniques originally pioneered by the Order. In this sense, the Templars' legacy endured not only in myth and legend, but in practical, tangible ways that shaped the economic structures of Europe long after their fall. Their genius lay not merely in wealth accumulation, but in creating systems that allowed knowledge, power, and resources to move efficiently, securely, and invisibly. A lesson that resonates even in modern financial systems. The Templars' disappearance did not mark the end of fear, however. Across Europe, the mythology of the Order became a tool for both fascination and intimidation. Stories of knights returning in secret, guarding relics, or enacting vengeance circulated widely. Some of these tales were undoubtedly exaggerated, designed to instill awe or control populations, but they reflect the persistent sense that the Templars represented something larger than themselves. A combination of devotion, discipline, and hidden knowledge that transcended mortal authority. Even centuries later, the fear and reverence associated with the Order endure, shaping cultural perceptions of secrecy, power, and loyalty. Perhaps most importantly, the Templars' survival in secret demonstrates the resilience of knowledge and ideology. Even when an organization is dismantled, its principles, practices, and treasures can endure, carried by those who understand and respect their value. For the Templars, this meant safeguarding sacred relics, codices, and esoteric knowledge, preserving rituals, symbols, and architectural wisdom, and passing on discipline, strategic thinking, and spiritual insight. In this way, the Order's influence became less visible but more enduring, infiltrating communities, shaping societies, and inspiring generations without ever appearing to do so overtly. The question that continues to captivate historians, treasure hunters, and enthusiasts alike is deceptively simple. What exactly did the Templars safeguard, and where did it go? Was it a vast accumulation of gold and property? Or did it include sacred relics, lost manuscripts, or knowledge that could alter the understanding of history, religion, or even human destiny? The ambiguity itself has ensured the endurance of their legend. What is hidden, after all, has a power that what is visible cannot match. The Templars' ability to move invisibly, plan meticulously, and protect secrets ensured that even centuries after their persecution, they remained a source of fascination, speculation, and inspiration. Ultimately, the post-Templar era reveals an order that was never merely defined by swords or robes, by battles or wealth. The Knights' true legacy lies in their combination of discipline, secrecy, devotion, and foresight. They mastered the art of surviving both physically and symbolically, transforming defeat into a foundation for enduring influence. Through architectural design, financial innovation, cultural memory, and perhaps even secret transmission of esoteric knowledge, the Templars ensured that their presence would continue to resonate long after the last knight fell into obscurity. Their story illustrates that true power lies not only in what one possesses, but in what one protects, conceals, and transmits to the future. In reflecting on the Templars' enduring influence, one sees a paradox. An organization destroyed in the eyes of the world, yet immortal in its ideas, symbols, and mysteries. The Knights' ability to persist in secret, to safeguard knowledge, and to influence society without overt presence demonstrates the profound resilience of human ingenuity, devotion, and strategic thinking. It is this combination of qualities that allows the Templars to remain more than a historical curiosity. They are a symbol of the unseen forces, hidden wisdom, and enduring legacies that shape history in ways often imperceptible to the casual observer. Even as the Templars' knights scattered across Europe, rumors persisted of hidden knowledge and secret relics that had been carefully guarded for centuries. Some chroniclers hinted at manuscripts containing forbidden wisdom, maps pointing to sacred sites, and artifacts that held both spiritual and practical power. While much of this remains speculation, the persistence of such stories suggests that the Templars' legacy was far from purely martial or financial. It was intellectual, mystical, and symbolic. These hidden treasures became the focus of fascination, envy, and obsession for generations. What exactly had the knights safeguarded? Was it simply wealth and property, or something more profound? Knowledge that could reshape faith, history, or human understanding. One particularly enduring theory revolves around the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem, from which the order took its name. Historical accounts indicate that the Templars had access to tunnels, vaults, and hidden chambers beneath the Temple Mount, where they may have discovered ancient texts, sacred relics, or treasures long lost to the world. Chroniclers from the Crusader period describe secretive rituals and careful guarding of mysterious artifacts, though details are vague and sometimes contradictory. Some suggest that the knights believed these objects to be infused with divine power, while others argue they may have contained information regarding ancient civilizations or esoteric knowledge. The secrecy surrounding these discoveries was central to the Templars' operations, ensuring that what they held could not be misused or fall into the wrong hands. The Templars' treasure may not have been purely material. Many historians believe the order cultivated esoteric knowledge, blending Christian theology with symbols, numerology, and mystical practices absorbed from the East during the Crusades. Some rituals incorporated geometrical patterns, cryptic symbols, and dualities meant to convey spiritual truths. Initiates were carefully trained, not only in martial and administrative skills, but in understanding the deeper meaning behind these practices. The secrecy of these rituals ensured that knowledge remained concentrated among the most trusted knights, reinforcing the order's cohesion and creating an aura of both mystique and authority. Evidence of this secretive knowledge appears in architecture and art. Many Templar churches and commanderies feature unusual symbols, labyrinthine layouts, and motifs that suggest layers of meaning beyond mere decoration. Crosses, serpents, twin riders, and skulls recur in Templar iconography, often in combinations that hint at moral, spiritual, or mystical concepts. Some scholars have interpreted these as teaching tools, meant to convey lessons about duality, mortality, divine wisdom, and the balance of power. To outsiders, these symbols may have seemed mysterious or even threatening, contributing to suspicions of heresy. To the Templars, they were a form of instruction, an encoded language that guided knights through both spiritual and practical challenges. The order's banking and financial networks may also have played a role in safeguarding hidden knowledge. Commanderies were not only military and religious centers but hubs of information and trade. Letters of credit, ledgers, and correspondence could have contained coded references to relics, locations, or insights, allowing the order to manage both material and intellectual assets across vast distances. This network, combined with their disciplined secrecy, made it difficult for outsiders to discern the full scope of the Templars' operations. Knowledge and wealth moved invisibly, protected by loyalty, discipline, and sometimes elaborate subterfuge. Many legends suggest that the Templars' most important secret involved relics of extraordinary religious significance. Some stories speak of the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, or fragments of the True Cross, objects whose spiritual power and symbolic weight could challenge established authority if revealed. While there is no concrete evidence of these relics' existence within Templar hands, the persistence of such tales indicates the psychological and cultural power of the idea. The Templars represented guardianship of a knowledge or power that few could comprehend. Even if purely symbolic, the idea of such a treasure elevated the order's reputation and inspired fear, reverence, and fascination. The secrecy surrounding these treasures and knowledge also explains the extraordinary care with which the Templars prepared for the possibility of persecution. Evidence suggests that knights moved valuable items to remote locations, buried artifacts in hidden vaults, or entrusted them to loyal allies in distant regions. Stories of underground tunnels, isolated commanderies, and clandestine networks reinforce the notion that the order anticipated threats and planned for the survival of its mission beyond its immediate presence. The discipline and foresight required for such measures speak to the Templars' strategic acumen and their understanding of the fragile balance between power, knowledge, and secrecy. The disappearance of the Templars in the early 14th century did not mark the end of these mysteries. Instead, it transformed them, creating a landscape of legend and speculation that continues to captivate historians, treasure hunters, and mystics alike. Tales of hidden vaults, lost manuscripts, and surviving knights inspired generations to search for what had been concealed. These stories were amplified by the dramatic betrayal of the order, the torture and martyrdom of its members, and the sudden seizure of its wealth. Together, these events created an enduring narrative of tragedy, secrecy, and mystery, one that blurred the line between history and myth. It is also important to consider the psychological effect of such secrecy. The Templars' ability to hold knowledge and artifacts out of reach reinforced the perception that they were extraordinary, even supernatural. Stories of hidden powers, forbidden knowledge, and miraculous relics created both awe and fear, not only among common people but among the powerful rulers who sought to control or destroy them. In this way, the order's reputation was a weapon in itself, extending influence far beyond what mere wealth or military might could achieve. The legacy of these hidden treasures continues to influence cultural memory. References to Templar relics appear in literature, folklore, and even modern media, perpetuating the idea of a secret knowledge that is both powerful and dangerous. The fascination with these hidden elements is not merely about material gain. It is about the enduring human attraction to mystery, the unknown, and the possibility that history contains layers of truth deliberately concealed from ordinary perception. The Templars' story is compelling because it combines faith, power, secrecy, and the human desire to seek what lies beyond comprehension. Ultimately, the narrative of Templar treasures and hidden knowledge illustrates a broader truth about the order itself. They were not merely knights, bankers, or monks. They were custodians of information, artifacts, and insights that transcended the ordinary boundaries of their era. Their foresight, discipline, and commitment to secrecy allowed them to survive in memory even when they were destroyed in body. The interplay between the visible and hidden, the material and spiritual, and the ordinary and extraordinary defines the enduring fascination with the Templars. Their treasures, whether real or symbolic, are a testament to the power of knowledge, secrecy, and human ambition when guided by unwavering devotion and foresight. The Templars' guardianship of hidden knowledge, their dispersal across Europe, and their ability to survive persecution transformed them from a military and religious order into a legend that continues to inspire curiosity, speculation, and reverence. Each lost manuscript, hidden relic and whispered tale contributes to the enduring mystery of the order, suggesting that the Knights' greatest treasure may not have been gold or land, but the wisdom, discipline, and secrecy that allowed them to leave a mark on history that cannot easily be erased. Even centuries later, the allure of the Templars' secrets reminds us that some knowledge, carefully protected and hidden, holds a power that endures far beyond the temporal world. The Templars' story after their official dissolution is shrouded in as much myth as it is in historical fact. While their official institutions were dismantled, scattered knights continued to operate quietly, maintaining a network of contacts and allies that extended across Europe and even into the Levant. Some scholars suggest that these surviving members were instrumental in preserving not just wealth or relics, but the very ethos of the order: discipline, secrecy, and an unwavering commitment to a higher purpose. This continuity, largely invisible to contemporary chroniclers, allowed the Templars to influence events and societies long after they had ceased to exist as a formal organization. They became a ghostly presence, shaping history from the shadows, their knowledge and ideals traveling with them wherever they went. In Portugal, for instance, the Order of Christ absorbed former Templars and retained much of their organizational structure. This new order maintained similar symbols, architectural styles, and even financial practices, suggesting that the Templars' influence endured in both tangible and intangible ways. Some fortresses and commanderies were converted into centers for training, governance, and the protection of knowledge, continuing the Templar legacy under a new guise. In Scotland and Spain, legends speak of knights who found refuge among sympathetic nobility, carrying with them sacred relics, secret manuscripts, and knowledge of the world beyond what most could see. These survivors became custodians of the order's most profound secrets, safeguarding information that was thought lost but had simply been moved beyond reach. The dispersion of the Templars after 1307 created a network of hidden influence that has fascinated historians for centuries. These knights were highly disciplined, trained to operate in secrecy, and sworn to uphold the order's principles regardless of circumstance. Some historians argue that this network may have informed or inspired the structure and philosophy of later secret societies, including early Freemasonry. Architectural motifs, ritual symbols, and ceremonial practices bear striking similarities to those observed in surviving Templar buildings and records, suggesting that the essence of the order may have been transmitted covertly through generations. This enduring influence underscores the idea that the Templars' power was not solely in arms or wealth, but in knowledge, secrecy, and the ability to operate beyond the eyes of contemporary authorities. The mythology surrounding Templar survival is closely tied to tales of hidden treasure and relics. Chroniclers and later authors describe vaults, tunnels, and secret chambers constructed by the knights, where sacred objects, manuscripts, and gold were stored. Many of these locations have never been found, and some may never have existed in the literal sense. Nevertheless, the idea that the Templars possessed items of extraordinary power has persisted through the centuries. Whether these treasures were religious relics, documents containing lost knowledge, or symbolic representations of spiritual truths, their legend contributed to the aura of fear and reverence that surrounded the order. The Templars' mastery of secrecy ensured that even if their physical presence was erased, the impression of their hidden power could never be fully extinguished. Accounts from the time suggest that some Templars fled to remote locations, often in the mountains, forests, or coastal regions where royal or ecclesiastical authorities had limited reach. These knights likely operated in small, autonomous groups, preserving knowledge, practicing their rituals, and protecting treasures in isolation. Such dispersion made it nearly impossible for contemporary powers to track or eliminate all remnants of the order, further fueling rumors of secretive activities, hidden wealth, and surviving knights. In this sense, the Templar strategy for survival was as much intellectual and spiritual as it was physical. They understood the value of concealment and the long-term preservation of knowledge and tradition. The psychological and cultural impact of the Templar survival cannot be understated. In a society dominated by kings and the church, the continued existence of an invisible, disciplined, and highly capable group operating outside conventional authority was both unsettling and fascinating. Legends of knights appearing suddenly, guiding rulers, guarding treasures, or influencing events created a sense of awe and fear. To contemporaries, these stories were indistinguishable from reality. To later generations, they became the foundation of myth, inspiring literature, folklore, and modern fascination. The Templars, in essence, had transcended their historical reality to become a symbol of hidden power, discipline, and mystery that continues to captivate imaginations today. This continued influence was not limited to Europe. The surviving knights, skilled in navigation, strategy, and finance, may have traveled to distant regions, including the Mediterranean, the Levant, and possibly North Africa. Some historians speculate that they may have contributed to the transmission of knowledge about trade, fortification, and military strategy, blending what they had learned in the Crusades with local expertise. Their presence in these regions could explain certain architectural, tactical, or economic innovations observed during the 14th and 15th centuries. Even if such contributions were subtle, they represent a continuation of Templar influence long after their formal suppression. The order's rituals, codes, and symbols also persisted in hidden ways. Ceremonial practices, moral teachings, and symbolic architecture served as a method of preserving identity and continuity, even in the absence of formal organization. The Templars' use of geometry, symmetry, and symbolic imagery, often in churches, castles, and commanderies, may have encoded knowledge intended for those initiated into the order's inner circle. This allowed the essence of the order to survive in a form that was resistant to persecution, accessible only to those trained to interpret it. In this way, the Templar survival was not merely physical or financial, but cultural, intellectual, and spiritual. The fascination with surviving Templars also inspired a proliferation of legends and speculative history. Tales of secret vaults, hidden relics, and cryptic manuscripts captured the imagination of treasure hunters, historians, and writers alike. The dramatic story of betrayal, arrest, and persecution added to the allure, creating a narrative in which the knights were not merely defeated, but transformed into a hidden force that continued to operate in secret. These stories underscore the human fascination with secrecy and the unknown. The idea that knowledge, power, and wisdom can endure even when institutions are destroyed, provided they are protected by those capable of understanding and safeguarding them. Ultimately, the survival of the Templars in scattered form demonstrates a profound understanding of resilience. The order's combination of discipline, secrecy, and foresight allowed its principles, rituals, and knowledge to endure long after its physical structures were dismantled. Through careful preservation, adaptation, and transmission, the essence of the Templars, both practical and spiritual, continued to influence society's architecture and cultural memory. Even today, the notion of surviving Templars sparks fascination, suggesting that their impact was never fully erased, but instead continues to shape our understanding of history, secrecy, and power. In reflecting on this period, one sees that the Templars' legacy is multifaceted. It is a story of martial skill, spiritual devotion, financial genius, and strategic foresight. Yet it is also a story of mystery, survival, and the endurance of knowledge in the face of persecution. The knights' ability to vanish from public view while preserving their principles, treasures, and wisdom is a testament to their ingenuity, discipline, and vision. In this sense, the Templars' survival is not just a historical footnote. It is a demonstration of the enduring power of secrecy, strategy, and commitment to a higher purpose, offering lessons that resonate far beyond the medieval world. The Templars' influence extended far beyond their visible presence, leaving subtle traces in art, architecture, and ritual that continue to intrigue historians and researchers today. Even after their dissolution, their designs, symbols, and methods of communication survived, often hidden in plain sight. Churches built by the order, for example, contained geometric patterns and iconography that were not merely decorative. They were coded messages, moral lessons, and perhaps even maps to hidden treasures or sacred sites. Labyrinthine layouts, cryptic inscriptions, and unusual alignments suggest that the Templars encoded knowledge in ways that could only be interpreted by those trained in their esoteric traditions. To the uninitiated, these symbols seemed mysterious, even threatening, but to a Templar, They conveyed instructions, warnings, or spiritual truths, serving as a bridge between the visible and hidden worlds. Some researchers argue that these architectural and artistic codes were not limited to religious structures. Fortresses, commanderies, and even urban buildings under Templar influence incorporated symbols and hidden chambers. Defensive structures often concealed secret passageways, vaults, and observation points, designed not merely for military strategy but to protect knowledge, artifacts, or other valuables. Maps and records suggest that the order created standardized methods for safeguarding treasures, ensuring that even if knights were captured or killed, their secrets would survive. The sophistication of these systems indicates a level of foresight and ingenuity far ahead of their time, blending practicality with esoteric symbolism. The Templars' rituals and ceremonies also served as a repository for their most profound knowledge. Initiation rites, vows, and daily practices were structured to teach discipline, loyalty, and moral resilience, but they also conveyed hidden lessons about spiritual insight, strategy, and the safeguarding of knowledge. Symbols used in ceremonies, crosses, twin riders, lions, serpents, and skulls, carried layered meanings, teaching moral lessons, imparting esoteric knowledge, and maintaining continuity across generations of knights. These practices were designed to survive persecution. Even if the order was officially destroyed, the principles embedded in ritual could be preserved, passed on, and interpreted by those with the necessary training and insight. One of the most enduring mysteries associated with the Templars involves their supposed guardianship of the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, or other relics of extraordinary religious significance. While concrete evidence is lacking, stories suggest that the order believed these artifacts held profound spiritual and symbolic power. They were treated not as mere trophies but as objects with the potential to influence faith, politics, or human understanding. The secrecy surrounding these relics fueled suspicion, fear, and reverence among contemporaries and ensured that the Templars' reputation remained formidable even after their dissolution. Legends of hidden grails, secret vaults, and forbidden texts contributed to a narrative in which the Templars were both protectors of divine wisdom and a threat to earthly authority. The dispersal of the Templars after 1307 did not erase these practices. Knights who survived likely carried ritual knowledge, coded messages, and symbolic understanding to new locations, adapting to changing circumstances while preserving the core principles of the order. In regions like Portugal, Scotland, and Spain, traces of Templar influence can be found in architectural motifs, ceremonial practices, and symbolic language that persisted for generations. This survival demonstrates the resilience of knowledge, showing that even when institutions are dismantled, ideas and practices can endure if they are carefully protected and transmitted. Financial practices also played a role in preserving influence. The Templars were pioneers in managing wealth across borders, creating systems that allowed knights, nobles, and pilgrims to transfer money safely and securely. Letters of credit, coded ledgers, and networked commanderies not only facilitated commerce but also provided a means of safeguarding valuable objects or information. This integration of financial acumen with secrecy and discipline ensured that the order could maintain influence and resources even when political and ecclesiastical pressures mounted. The Templars' innovations in banking and administration influenced subsequent financial systems in Europe, illustrating how their methods of organization and control outlasted the order itself. The Templars' hidden knowledge and enduring influence also had psychological and cultural effects. Stories of their secret rituals, hidden treasures, and surviving knights inspired fear, fascination, and respect. For rulers, the idea that an independent, disciplined, and highly capable group operated beyond their control was unnerving. For ordinary people, tales of mysterious knights, miraculous events, and secret knowledge captured the imagination. Over time, these stories merged with folklore, literature, and later historical interpretations, creating a mythology in which the Templars transcended ordinary historical actors to become symbols of hidden power and enduring mystery. Some scholars suggest that the Templars' esoteric knowledge was deliberately encoded to survive persecution and ensure continuity. By embedding lessons and instructions in architecture, ritual, and art, the order created a means of transmitting wisdom, without relying on written records alone. This encoded knowledge may have included moral guidance, spiritual insight, strategic instruction, and practical techniques for safeguarding wealth or artifacts. The layered nature of these teachings ensured that even if portions of the order were destroyed, the essence of their mission could be preserved for those capable of understanding and interpreting the symbols. The Templars' legacy also highlights the tension between visibility and secrecy, power and restraint. Their achievements in warfare, finance, and administration were highly visible, earning admiration and envy alike. Their deeper knowledge, however, remained largely hidden, accessible only to those within the inner circle. This duality created both strength and vulnerability. The order could command influence while remaining enigmatic, yet the perception of hidden power also provoked fear and hostility. Ultimately, the Templars' story demonstrates that knowledge, carefully protected and selectively shared, can wield influence that outlasts armies, wealth, or political authority. Even centuries later, the remnants of Templar influence are apparent in architecture, ritual, and cultural memory. Hidden symbols, labyrinthine passages, and ceremonial practices continue to draw the attention of scholars, researchers, and enthusiasts seeking to decode their meaning. The persistence of these symbols in multiple regions suggests that the Order's strategies for survival and continuity were remarkably effective. The combination of secrecy, discipline, and foresight allowed the Templars' influence to extend far beyond their physical demise, creating a legacy that is both historical and mythological, tangible and enigmatic. Ultimately, the Templars' use of architecture, art, ritual, and finance to safeguard knowledge illustrates a sophisticated understanding of influence and survival. They recognized that power was not only about strength, wealth, or position. It was about the ability to protect, transmit, and conceal knowledge that could outlast persecution and time itself. Their methods ensured that even after their physical dissolution, the Order's principles, practices, and influence continued to shape society, architecture, and cultural imagination. The Templar's story is a reminder that what is hidden, disciplined, and preserved carefully can endure far longer than what is visible and overt. In examining the Templars' hidden practices, one realizes that their true genius was their foresight. By blending martial discipline, spiritual devotion, financial acumen, and esoteric knowledge, they created an organization capable of surviving not only wars but also political persecution. The Order's influence extended beyond its formal existence, shaping society, culture, and history through carefully guarded knowledge, secret symbols, and disciplined practice. In this way, the Templars were more than knights. They were architects of enduring influence, their legacy continuing to inspire awe, curiosity, and mystery centuries after their disappearance. Even after the formal dissolution of the Templars, whispers persisted of knights operating in secret, guarding hidden treasures, and preserving forbidden knowledge. These survivors, though scattered and often living under assumed identities, were believed to maintain the discipline, loyalty, and spiritual rigor that had defined the Order. Some historians argue that these remnants became custodians not only of material wealth but of esoteric wisdom. Sacred relics, cryptic manuscripts, and encoded knowledge that could not be entrusted to the uninitiated. The Templars had understood a truth that many rulers and popes could not, that knowledge, carefully preserved and selectively shared, could wield power far beyond that of armies or gold. Their survival, therefore, was both practical and symbolic, a continuation of an unseen influence that would echo through history long after their public demise. In southern Europe, particularly in Portugal and Spain, surviving Templars are said to have been welcomed by sympathetic rulers. In Portugal, the Order of Christ effectively absorbed former Templars, preserving their symbols, architecture, and financial networks. Fortresses such as Tomar continued to function as centers of strategic planning, spiritual instruction, and perhaps even the safeguarding of hidden treasures. In Spain, scattered knights found refuge among noble families, where they maintained aspects of Templar ritual and knowledge. These dispersed communities served as both guardians and transmitters of the Order's most valuable secrets, ensuring that the essence of the Templars could survive even in exile. The survival of the Templars was not merely a matter of hiding wealth or relocating relics. It was also the preservation of knowledge. Codices, maps, and treatises, some written in obscure or coded languages, were reportedly smuggled across borders or concealed in hidden chambers. These texts may have contained strategic insights, spiritual teachings, or historical accounts that the church or kings would have deemed dangerous. By protecting such information, the Templars ensured that their intellectual legacy would survive, even as their political and military influence was eradicated. The encoded nature of their knowledge meant that only those initiated into their mysteries could decipher its meaning, a safeguard that reinforced both secrecy and continuity. Legends speak of hidden vaults and subterranean tunnels built beneath commanderies and churches, places designed to conceal treasures and sacred artifacts. Some of these structures have been discovered, revealing intricate engineering and sophisticated planning. Others remain hidden, tantalizing historians and adventurers alike with the possibility of uncovering lost relics or documents. These hidden spaces were not merely practical. They were symbolic, representing the Templars' commitment to guarding what was sacred, secret, and powerful. The careful integration of these vaults into the architectural and spiritual fabric of Templar buildings ensured that knowledge and treasures could endure through centuries of turmoil. The psychological and cultural impact of Templar survival also played a role in shaping perceptions of power and secrecy. Tales of knights operating clandestinely, protecting relics, or influencing events from the shadows contributed to a mystique that outlived the order itself. Rulers feared the invisible reach of the Templars, while common people were captivated by stories of miraculous feats, secret wisdom, and hidden treasures. Over time, these narratives evolved into myths, blending historical events with speculation and imagination. The Templars became a symbol not only of martial and spiritual discipline but of enduring mystery, a presence that could influence society long after the last knight had disappeared from public view. Financial expertise remained another pillar of the Templars' post-dissolution influence. The order had pioneered early banking systems, letters of credit, and secure methods for transferring wealth across borders. Even after the official order ceased to exist, these financial practices persisted, often adopted by other institutions or adapted for new purposes. Wealth, strategy, and discretion were intertwined. The Templars' financial acumen allowed them to move assets invisibly, safeguarding both material and intellectual treasures. This duality of power, visible wealth and hidden knowledge, ensured that the order's influence extended beyond their physical presence, leaving a legacy of ingenuity and foresight. Rituals and ceremonial practices continued to serve as vehicles for preserving the order's knowledge and ethos. Initiation rites, moral codes, and symbolic gestures were carefully maintained, often adapted to local contexts or secretive environments. The meanings embedded in these rituals, lessons in loyalty, courage, discernment, and the safeguarding of knowledge, ensured that the spirit of the order could survive even without formal structure. Knights who had witnessed or participated in these ceremonies could interpret and teach them in exile, allowing the Templars' philosophy to persist in forms invisible to outside observers. Some historians suggest that surviving Templars may have influenced the development of later secretive organizations, including the Freemasons. Similarities in ritual, symbolism, and moral instruction hint at the transmission of knowledge and philosophy across generations. While direct evidence is scarce, the parallel suggests that the Templars' legacy did not vanish but instead evolved, passing into networks that valued secrecy, discipline, and esoteric wisdom. The idea that the order's principles and methods could endure beyond persecution reinforces the notion that their true power lay not in their swords or castles, but in their understanding of knowledge, secrecy, and human loyalty. The allure of hidden treasures and sacred relics ensured that the Templars remained a subject of fascination. Stories of lost manuscripts, hidden vaults, and surviving knights perpetuated the sense that the order's influence had not been fully extinguished. These narratives were amplified by the dramatic betrayal, arrests, and trials that marked the order's downfall. The combination of historical fact, speculation, and myth created a narrative in which the Templars were both martyrs and guardians, simultaneously human and legendary. Their ability to survive, even in secret, made them figures whose stories could be endlessly retold, interpreted, and imagined. Ultimately, The survival of the Templars illustrates the endurance of discipline, secrecy, and foresight in the face of extreme adversity. Knights who escaped persecution preserved more than wealth or relics. They safeguarded an ethos, a method of operating in the world that blended strategy, devotion, and knowledge. Their influence, though invisible, shaped societies, inspired legends, and left traces in architecture, finance, ritual, and cultural memory. The Templars' story after 1307 demonstrates that even when an organization is officially destroyed, its principles, knowledge, and methods can endure, hidden from view yet shaping history in subtle and enduring ways. The post-dissolution period of the Templars challenges us to consider the true nature of influence. It is not always what is visible: armies, buildings, or wealth, but what is protected, transmitted, and concealed. By operating in secret, safeguarding treasures, and preserving knowledge, the surviving knights ensured that the Templars' presence remained a force in European society. Their story is a testament to the resilience of human ingenuity, the power of secrecy, and the enduring impact of disciplined, strategic action. In this way, the Templars' survival after official dissolution is not merely a historical curiosity. It is a demonstration of how knowledge, devotion, and foresight can transcend persecution, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire, challenge, and fascinate. Even as the Templars vanished from public view, the echoes of their presence continued to resonate across Europe, leaving behind a trail of mystery, speculation, and influence that historians and enthusiasts have sought to unravel for centuries. While the Knights were officially disbanded, the surviving members, dispersed, secretive, and highly trained, continued to operate in ways that preserved the order's essence. These men were more than warriors. They were custodians of a complex legacy, combining spiritual devotion, martial discipline, financial ingenuity, and esoteric knowledge. By operating in the shadows, they ensured that the Templars' principles, treasures, and wisdom could endure even in exile, and their story became as much about survival and secrecy as it was about power and faith. The dispersal of Templars after 1307 saw them seeking refuge in regions beyond the immediate reach of Philip IV's agents. Portugal is perhaps the most well-documented example, where the Order of Christ absorbed many former knights, retaining the Templars' symbols, practices, and administrative structures. This transition was not merely bureaucratic. It represented the continuation of a philosophical and spiritual lineage. Fortresses, commanderies, and churches became repositories for knowledge and treasures that the order had painstakingly guarded. In Scotland, legends suggest that Templars found protection under sympathetic nobles, while in Spain, scattered knights may have merged with other religious or military orders. Each of these dispersed communities acted as a node in a clandestine network, preserving aspects of the Templars' influence while remaining largely invisible to outsiders. One of the most fascinating elements of the Templars' post-dissolution legacy is the intertwining of material and spiritual preservation. Chronicles and later legends describe knights who protected hidden caches of gold, sacred relics, and manuscripts that contained forbidden knowledge. Some of these artifacts were said to include fragments of the True Cross, holy vessels, and documents detailing esoteric teachings. While much of this remains speculative, the repeated appearance of such stories across Europe suggests that the Templars' secretive practices were more than myth. They were an extension of a deliberate strategy to safeguard objects of immense spiritual and practical value. The secrecy surrounding these items elevated their importance, ensuring that the Templars' influence persisted even when their formal structure was destroyed. Architecture also played a critical role in the preservation and communication of Templar knowledge. Commanderies and fortresses constructed by the order often contained hidden rooms, underground vaults, and symbolic layouts that encoded moral, spiritual, and strategic lessons. Labyrinthine corridors, cryptic inscriptions, and geometric patterns were not only defensive measures, but also a means of transmitting knowledge to initiates. Churches and fortresses alike incorporated symbols whose meanings were carefully guarded, creating a form of knowledge that was both durable and hidden in plain sight. Even centuries later, researchers examining these structures can detect evidence of intentional design meant to preserve secrets and convey lessons to those trained to interpret them. The Templars' ritual practices and ceremonies were equally significant. Initiation rites, vows, and symbolic gestures were designed to instill discipline, loyalty, and spiritual insight while simultaneously encoding knowledge. Symbols such as twin riders, lions, serpents, and crosses carried layered meanings, teaching lessons about morality, vigilance, and the protection of knowledge. These rituals provided continuity, allowing the order's principles to survive beyond the physical order itself. Even if knights were forced into exile or operated in isolation, these practices ensured that the Templars' philosophy remained intact, transmitted orally, visually, and symbolically across generations. Financial systems established by the Templars were another avenue through which influence persisted. The order had pioneered methods for transferring wealth across long distances, providing security for pilgrims and rulers alike. Letters of credit, intricate ledgers, and trusted networks allowed them to move resources invisibly, facilitating the protection of assets and knowledge. After the dissolution, these financial practices likely continued in adapted forms, allowing surviving knights and their allies to preserve both wealth and influence. This dual mastery of tangible resources and esoteric knowledge illustrates the order's remarkable understanding of power. True strength lay not only in armies or castles, but in the ability to protect, move, and conceal assets and information with discretion. The psychological and cultural ramifications of Templar survival were profound. Stories of hidden knights, secret treasures, and surviving relics inspired awe, fear, and fascination across Europe. Rulers feared an invisible influence that could operate outside conventional authority, while common people marveled at tales of miraculous deeds and hidden wisdom. These stories blurred the line between history and myth, creating a legacy in which the Templars transcended ordinary historical actors to become symbols of secrecy, discipline, and enduring mystery. The order's ability to cultivate and maintain this aura of mystique was perhaps as significant as its military or financial achievements. The survival of Templars also highlights the interplay between secrecy and continuity. By operating clandestinely, preserving hidden knowledge, and maintaining rituals and symbols, the knights ensured that their principles and wisdom could endure beyond persecution. Codices, maps, and manuscripts, often encoded or hidden, provided a method of transmitting knowledge across generations. Architectural symbols reinforced these lessons, creating an enduring framework for the order's philosophy and strategy. This approach allowed the Templars to influence societies, rituals, and even financial practices, despite their official absence from the historical record. Legends of Templar treasures, relics, and secret knowledge have endured precisely because they combine historical plausibility with the allure of the unknown. Stories of lost manuscripts, hidden vaults, and surviving knights provide both mystery and a sense of connection to an order that transcended ordinary life. These narratives were amplified by the dramatic events surrounding the order's fall. The arrests, trials, and executions that marked a brutal suppression by kings and popes alike. The combination of fact, speculation, and myth created an enduring cultural fascination that persists in literature, folklore, and modern media. Ultimately, the Templars' post-dissolution legacy is a testament to foresight, discipline, and strategic resilience. Surviving knights protected not only wealth and relics but an ethos, a method of understanding and operating in the world that combines secrecy, devotion, and intelligence. Their influence extended beyond the immediate historical context, shaping architecture, ritual, financial systems, and cultural memory for generations. Even centuries later, the allure of hidden Templar knowledge, surviving knights, and secret treasures continues to captivate imaginations, suggesting that the order's greatest power lay not in what was visible, but in what they protected, concealed, and transmitted through time. The Templars' survival in secret illustrates a broader truth about power. Influence is not always apparent. What is hidden, disciplined, and carefully preserved can endure far longer than armies, kingdoms, or wealth. By safeguarding knowledge, maintaining rituals, and protecting treasures, the order created a legacy that could survive persecution, political change, and the passage of centuries. The Templars were more than knights. They were architects of enduring influence, their story a demonstration of how devotion, discipline, and secrecy can extend power far beyond the temporal. Their legacy reminds us that the unseen, the hidden, and the protected often shape history more profoundly than what is visible. Even after their official dissolution, the Templars' story did not end. It merely shifted into a hidden narrative that unfolded across Europe, whispered in corridors, and encoded in architecture, ritual, and legend. Survivors of the order, skilled in both martial and spiritual disciplines, became keepers of secrets too dangerous or profound to be shared openly. These knights were not simply hiding. They were strategically preserving the order's essence, its knowledge, treasures, and rituals, while ensuring continuity beyond the reach of kings, popes, and inquisitors. Every action taken in exile, every fortress repurposed, and every coded manuscript safeguarded was part of a calculated effort to maintain the Templars' legacy. They understood that true influence was not solely in visible power but in the careful management and concealment of knowledge, wealth, and sacred truths. In Portugal, the absorption of former Templars into the Order of Christ ensured a continuation of practices, symbols, and strategic knowledge. Fortresses like Tomar were transformed into centers of administration, spiritual reflection, and clandestine protection. These commanderies were more than military bases. They were hubs of intelligence, financial control, and symbolic instruction. Knights operating within these spaces were charged not only with defending the realm but with preserving the order's most sacred and secretive knowledge. Similar enclaves are suggested in Spain, Scotland, and southern France, where sympathetic nobles and ecclesiastical allies provided sanctuary. Within these hidden networks, the Templars could train initiates, store treasures, and continue rituals without exposure, demonstrating that their influence had migrated into a subtler, more enduring form. The preservation of relics and manuscripts became a central focus of post-dissolution Templar activity. Chroniclers and later legends describe knights safeguarding fragments of the true cross, sacred vessels, and codices containing esoteric knowledge. While the veracity of these accounts is debated, their persistence across centuries indicates that such claims had cultural, symbolic, and perhaps historical weight. Knights were trained not only to fight and manage wealth but to protect knowledge of profound spiritual and strategic significance. This dual role as warriors and custodians created a unique form of resilience. Even when the order's material power was destroyed, its intellectual and spiritual influence remained intact, transmitted silently through generations. Architectural ingenuity was another vehicle through which the Templars preserved secrets. Fortresses and commanderies were designed with hidden chambers, underground vaults, and labyrinthine passages that concealed treasures, documents, and ritual spaces. Churches incorporated cryptic geometric patterns, symbols, and alignments that conveyed layered messages, moral, spiritual, or practical, under the guise of decoration. Scholars analyzing these structures often note the sophistication of their design. Spaces that could serve as both defensive positions and symbolic teaching tools, ensuring that knowledge survived in physical form even if knights were scattered or killed. The careful integration of secrecy into architecture reflects the order's foresight and understanding of long-term survival. Rituals and ceremonies remained central to Templar continuity. Initiation rites, daily practices, and symbolic gestures were carefully maintained, transmitting moral, spiritual, and strategic lessons across generations. Symbols such as lions, serpents, crosses, and twin riders carried multiple meanings. Instruction in vigilance, loyalty, discipline, and the safeguarding of secrets. These rituals were not merely formalities. They were tools for education, discipline, and the preservation of knowledge. Even in exile, knights could participate in ceremonies that reinforced the values and strategies of the order, ensuring that the Templar ethos remained alive despite the absence of formal structures. Financial acumen played a surprisingly significant role in the Templars' hidden influence. The order had pioneered banking systems, letters of credit, and methods for transferring wealth securely across vast distances. After the dissolution, these practices likely continued in modified forms, enabling surviving knights and their allies to safeguard material and intellectual assets. The ability to move resources invisibly, combined with coded communication and trusted networks, ensured that influence could persist without attracting the attention of rulers or church authorities. In this way, the Templars' mastery of finance became a tool of survival and a means to maintain power discreetly. The cultural and psychological impact of Templar survival cannot be underestimated. Stories of knights guarding relics, hidden treasures, and secret knowledge inspired both awe and fear. Rulers worried about invisible influence, while common people were captivated by tales of miraculous deeds and esoteric wisdom. Over time, these narratives evolved into legend, blurring the line between history and myth. The perception of the Templars as an enduring, unseen force amplified their influence, making them figures whose reputation extended far beyond their actual physical presence. Fear and fascination became a form of power in itself, ensuring that the Order's legacy persisted in both fact and imagination. Legends suggest that some Templars traveled beyond Europe, extending their network of influence to the Mediterranean, the Levant, and perhaps North Africa. These knights carried with them knowledge of military strategy, navigation, trade, and ritual, blending it with local expertise. Their presence may have influenced architectural developments, fortification strategies, and financial systems, suggesting that Templar knowledge was both portable and adaptable. Even if these contributions were subtle, they demonstrate the Order's capacity for survival and influence in exile, extending its reach across borders and cultures. The persistence of hidden Templar knowledge underscores the Order's understanding of the interplay between secrecy and power. Codices, architectural symbols, and ritual practices encoded lessons meant for initiates, ensuring continuity even when the physical order was destroyed. This strategic approach allowed the Templars to influence society in ways that were invisible, subtle, and enduring. Their survival strategy relied not only on physical concealment but on the careful cultivation of cultural, spiritual, and intellectual memory, a network of influence that could endure without public visibility. Ultimately, the Templars' post-dissolution survival demonstrates the resilience of disciplined, strategic organizations. Knights who escaped persecution preserved not only wealth and artifacts but an ethos, a method of thinking, acting, and guarding knowledge that transcended time. Their influence shaped architecture, ritual, financial systems, and cultural memory, leaving traces that continue to intrigue and inspire. The Order's legacy reminds us that power does not always manifest in armies or opulence. It is often hidden, disciplined, and carefully safeguarded, capable of enduring centuries of adversity and suppression. The story of the surviving Templars is a testament to foresight, strategy, and the enduring power of secrecy. Through careful preservation of knowledge, discipline in ritual, and prudent management of resources, the Order created a legacy that would survive persecution, political upheaval, and the erosion of time. Even centuries later, the mystique of hidden Templar knowledge, surviving knights, and secret treasures continues to captivate imaginations, suggesting that the Order's greatest influence lay not in visible power, but in the ability to protect, conceal, and transmit what mattered most. In this way, the Templars became architects of invisible influence, their story a lesson in the enduring potency of discipline, secrecy, and foresight. Even long after the fall of the Order, whispers of the Templars' survival persisted in both rumor and legend, suggesting that knights had managed to preserve not only their wealth but their most precious secrets. Accounts from the 14th and 15th centuries hint at scattered groups of knights who maintained coded correspondence, hidden archives, and clandestine networks. These remnants were not merely hiding. They were actively safeguarding a legacy that combined spiritual, intellectual, and practical knowledge. Unlike armies or kingdoms, this power could endure invisibly, transmitted quietly from one generation to the next, often under the cover of seemingly ordinary roles in society. The Templars had understood a principle that many rulers and church leaders failed to grasp. Knowledge, when guarded with discipline and foresight, can outlast swords, armies, and thrones. In the Iberian Peninsula, Portugal became a haven for surviving Templars. The Order of Christ, which absorbed former knights, preserved much of the Templar organizational structure, rituals, and symbolism. Fortresses like Tomar and other commanderies were transformed into centers of spiritual reflection, governance, and the clandestine safeguarding of treasures. Beyond serving as military or religious hubs, these places acted as repositories of knowledge, where sacred manuscripts, coded documents, and possibly relics were concealed. In Spain, scattered Templars reportedly found refuge among sympathetic nobility, integrating into local society while continuing to observe the order's traditions in secret. These hidden enclaves formed a web of continuity, ensuring that the Templars' philosophy, discipline, and methods endured even in exile. The idea of hidden treasures and sacred relics played a significant role in maintaining the Templars' mystique. Chroniclers and later legends frequently mention the preservation of extraordinary objects. Fragments of the true cross, sacred vessels, and manuscripts containing esoteric or forbidden knowledge. While historical evidence for these claims is limited, the consistency of such stories across time and geography suggests that the order's secrecy was deliberate and methodical. Knights were trained to protect items of spiritual and practical significance, ensuring that knowledge and power were preserved even when exposed to persecution or political manipulation. In this way, the Templars' strategy combined foresight with discipline, safeguarding treasures that were more than material. They were symbols of authority, wisdom, and divine favor. Architectural design served as another method of encoding and preserving knowledge. Templar fortresses, commanderies, and churches often contained hidden chambers, vaults, and labyrinthine passages. Symbolic motifs, geometric patterns, and cryptic inscriptions conveyed lessons about strategy, morality, and spiritual insight. For example, the layouts of certain churches suggest they were designed not only for worship but also to encode knowledge about geometry, astronomy, or moral allegories accessible only to the initiated. Underground vaults and secret passageways provided physical protection for treasures and manuscripts, but they also represented a philosophical commitment. Knowledge, power, and faith were inseparable, and all required protection against the corruption of unprepared or unworthy hands. Ritual and ceremonial practice remained at the heart of Templar continuity. Initiation rites, daily observances, and symbolic gestures were meticulously maintained and passed down to ensure that the principles of the order survived in dispersed communities. Symbols such as lions, twin riders, crosses, and serpents carried layered meanings: moral instruction, vigilance, spiritual wisdom, and guidance for safeguarding knowledge. These rituals were not mere formalities. They were educational and protective tools, ensuring that even isolated or exiled knights could transmit the order's ethos accurately. Through such ceremonies, the Templars created a living tradition capable of enduring persecution, exile, and the erosion of formal structures. Financial systems established by the Templars also enabled their survival and extended influence. The order pioneered methods for transferring wealth safely across long distances, including letters of credit and intricate bookkeeping systems. Even after the order's formal suppression, these techniques may have continued in modified forms, allowing surviving knights to maintain resources, protect treasures, and sustain networks of influence. Wealth and knowledge were intertwined. Control over resources enabled the preservation of secrets, while the careful management of information allowed resources to be used strategically. This dual mastery of finance and secrecy was an enduring testament to the Templars' understanding of long-term influence. The psychological impact of the Templars' survival further enhanced their mystique. Stories of knights guarding sacred relics, hidden treasures, and secret manuscripts captured the imagination of rulers, scholars, and common people alike. To kings, the presence of a disciplined, invisible group operating outside conventional authority was a threat. To ordinary folk, tales of miraculous feats and esoteric knowledge inspired awe. Over time, these narratives evolved into legends, blending historical truth with imagination, and creating an enduring perception of the Templars as a force that transcended the ordinary limits of human power. Their ability to command respect, fear, and fascination long after their physical presence had vanished is a testament to the enduring power of secrecy and discipline. Some surviving Templars reportedly traveled beyond Europe, carrying their knowledge and influence to the Mediterranean, the Levant, and North Africa. Skilled in military strategy, navigation, trade, and esoteric practice, These knights adapted to new environments while preserving the essence of the order. Their presence may have contributed to architectural, economic, and strategic developments in these regions. Even subtle influences, such as introducing new fortification techniques, financial systems, or ritual symbols, demonstrate that the Templar survival was not passive. It was active, strategic, and enduring. Encoded knowledge was central to the order's resilience. Manuscripts, architectural symbols, and ritual practices contained lessons meant for the initiated, allowing the essence of the order to survive across generations and geographies. This strategic approach ensured that the Templars' influence persisted without exposing them to persecution or scrutiny. Knowledge and secrecy were inseparable. What could be protected and transmitted safely could endure, shaping societies, rituals, and cultural memory in ways that outlasted armies, empires, and formal institutions. Ultimately, the story of Templar survival demonstrates a profound understanding of power, discipline, and foresight. Knights who survived the order's suppression protected more than wealth or relics. They preserved a way of thinking, acting, and transmitting knowledge that could endure centuries of political upheaval. Their methods allowed them to shape cultural memory, architecture, financial practices, and rituals long after their formal structures were dismantled. Even today, fascination with hidden Templar knowledge, surviving knights, and secret treasures continues, reminding us that the Order's greatest power lay not in what was visible, but in what was guarded, concealed, and transmitted through disciplined, strategic foresight. The Templars' enduring legacy serves as a powerful reminder that influence is not always apparent. True power lies in what is protected, disciplined, and carefully transmitted. By safeguarding knowledge, maintaining ritual, and controlling resources, the Order created a presence that outlasted persecution and survived the erosion of time. The story of their survival is not just history. It is a testament to human ingenuity, strategic foresight, and the enduring potency of secrecy. In guarding what mattered most, the Templars became architects of influence whose impact continues to echo across centuries, blending fact, legend, and the fascination of the unknown. Even after the dramatic fall of the Templars, their influence did not simply vanish. It transformed into something subtler, more enigmatic, and far-reaching. The surviving knights, dispersed across Europe and beyond, became custodians of knowledge, ritual, and treasures that had been accumulated over decades of crusades, political maneuvering, and spiritual devotion. They understood that their true power lay not merely in armies, castles, or gold, but in secrecy, discipline, and the careful preservation of information. This hidden legacy allowed them to continue shaping events, cultures, and institutions long after the papal bull and royal edicts had declared them extinct. Their survival became both a strategic necessity and a statement of resilience. The Templars would endure, even if only in shadow. In Portugal, the absorption of Templars into the Order of Christ ensured that their practices, knowledge, and symbols would not be lost. Commanderies like Tomar became multifunctional hubs, centers of governance, spiritual training, and hidden repositories for treasures and sacred texts. Knights who were once part of the Order continued to observe rituals, safeguard relics, and maintain networks that extended across borders. These enclaves were more than places of refuge. They were living embodiments of Templar continuity. In Spain, Scotland, and southern France, sympathetic nobles and clergy offered protection to scattered knights, creating nodes of secrecy where the Order's values, discipline, and methods could be maintained. Even without formal recognition, these networks enabled the Templars' ethos to endure. One of the most enduring aspects of Templar survival was their guardianship of hidden treasures and sacred relics. Chroniclers and later accounts frequently mention knights protecting fragments of the True Cross, sacred vessels, and manuscripts containing esoteric knowledge. While some of these claims may border on myth, the consistency of these stories across time and geography suggests that the preservation of sacred and strategic objects was deliberate. Knights were trained not only in martial skill, but in the protection and interpretation of knowledge, creating a dual role as warrior custodians. This focus on safeguarding the intangible alongside the tangible ensured that the Order's influence could persist beyond the physical destruction of its structures. architecture became a crucial medium for the preservation of Templar knowledge. Fortresses, churches, and commanderies were often designed with hidden chambers, underground vaults, and complex passageways. Symbolic elements, geometric patterns, and cryptic inscriptions conveyed moral, spiritual, and practical lessons, accessible only to those trained to interpret them. In some locations, the very layout of the buildings functioned as an encoded map of knowledge, strategic advice, or spiritual instruction. The dual functionality of these structures, both practical and symbolic, demonstrates the Order's foresight in embedding lessons and safeguards into their physical environment, ensuring that even if knights were scattered, the essence of the Order could survive. Ritual and ceremony remained central to Templar continuity. Initiation rites, daily observances, and symbolic gestures conveyed layered lessons about loyalty, vigilance, and spiritual insight. Symbols such as lions, twin riders, crosses, and serpents encoded guidance on morality, discipline, and the protection of knowledge. These practices allowed the Order's philosophy and ethics to persist across generations, even in exile or isolation. Ritual was both a method of education and a means of safeguarding information, ensuring that the Templars' identity and principles were maintained despite the dismantling of formal organizational structures. Financial systems also played a critical role in sustaining the Order's influence. The Templars had pioneered methods for transferring wealth across borders, using letters of credit, ledgers, and secure networks that allowed them to manage resources invisibly. After the dissolution, these techniques likely continued in adapted forms, enabling surviving knights to preserve material and intellectual assets. Control over wealth and the ability to move it discreetly reinforced the Order's hidden power, linking financial acumen with the protection of knowledge and sacred relics. The Templars' mastery of economics was inseparable from their broader strategy of endurance and influence. The cultural and psychological impact of the Templar survival was profound. Stories of knights guarding sacred relics, hidden manuscripts, and treasures inspired both awe and fear. Rulers worried about an invisible, disciplined, and highly capable group that operated beyond conventional authority. Common people were captivated by tales of miraculous deeds, secret wisdom, and hidden influence. Over time, these stories became legends, blending historical fact with imagination and creating a mystique that amplified the Order's influence long after their formal disappearance. The fear and fascination surrounding the Templars became a source of soft power, allowing them to shape perception and memory in ways that were subtle but enduring. Some surviving Templars traveled beyond Europe, carrying knowledge of military strategy, navigation, trade, and esoteric practice to the Mediterranean, the Levant, and North Africa. Their ability to adapt while preserving the Order's philosophy suggests that survival was both practical and intellectual. Even small contributions, such as architectural innovations, strategic guidance, or the introduction of symbolic knowledge, illustrate the Templars' capacity to influence societies without appearing to wield formal authority. Their presence in these regions underscores the mobility and adaptability of their secret networks, which operated silently but effectively. The Templars' commitment to secrecy and encoded knowledge ensured the longevity of their influence. Manuscripts, ritual practices, and symbolic architecture created a system of knowledge transmission that could survive even if the Order's physical structures were destroyed. Initiates could interpret lessons embedded in symbols, ceremonies, and texts, preserving the Order's ethos across time and geography. This strategy allowed the Templars to maintain cultural, spiritual, and practical influence invisibly, demonstrating that knowledge, when protected and transmitted carefully, can endure far beyond conventional power structures. Ultimately, the Templars' post-dissolution existence is a testament to resilience, foresight, and strategic ingenuity. Knights who survived preserved not only material assets but an entire system of thought, discipline, and spiritual practice. Their influence extended into architecture, ritual, finance, and cultural memory, leaving traces that continue to intrigue, inspire, and mystify. The Order's enduring presence, often invisible, reminds us that the most powerful forces in history are not always overt. They are concealed, disciplined, and carefully safeguarded. By preserving what mattered most, The Templars ensured that their legacy would endure, a testament to the enduring potency of secrecy, strategy, and devotion. The Templars' hidden survival serves as a powerful lesson. Influence is not always visible. True power resides in what is protected, disciplined, and transmitted. By safeguarding knowledge, maintaining ritual, and controlling resources, the Order extended its influence far beyond its temporal demise. Their story is a demonstration of how devotion, discipline, and foresight can preserve power across centuries, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire awe, curiosity, and reverence. The Knights of the Templar Order became architects of invisible influence, shaping history in ways that remain partially hidden, yet profoundly impactful. Even after the Templars were officially disbanded, their story continued in whispers, legends, and clandestine networks that stretched across Europe and beyond. These surviving knights were not merely fugitives. They were custodians of a hidden legacy that combined martial discipline, spiritual devotion, financial acumen, and esoteric knowledge. Each displaced knight carried with him the weight of responsibility, not only to protect the treasures and relics of the Order, but to preserve the philosophical and strategic wisdom that had guided the Templars for generations. Their survival was both practical and symbolic, representing a form of power that could endure far beyond the reach of armies, kings, and popes. In this shadowed world, influence was measured not in territory or wealth, but in the ability to conceal, transmit, and protect knowledge across time. Portugal became one of the most significant havens for surviving Templars. The Order of Christ absorbed many of the displaced knights, providing them with protection while allowing them to maintain elements of Templar structure, ritual, and symbolic practice. Fortresses such as Tomar were transformed into centers not only of administration and military strategy but also of clandestine safeguarding. Within these walls, sacred relics, secret manuscripts, and coded documents were protected from those who might misuse or destroy them. These fortresses were more than military outposts. They were repositories of knowledge, centers for spiritual training, and nodes in a network that allowed the Templars' principles to endure even when the Order no longer officially existed. The Templars' focus on hidden treasures and sacred relics became a central feature of their post-dissolution identity. Chronicles and legends describe knights protecting fragments of the true cross, sacred vessels, and manuscripts filled with esoteric or forbidden knowledge. While concrete historical proof of some of these treasures is elusive, the persistence of such stories indicates that these practices were at least partially rooted in reality. Knights were trained to protect and interpret these objects, blending martial skill with spiritual insight and intellectual responsibility. In doing so, they ensured that the Templars' influence extended beyond the battlefield and into the realms of faith, knowledge, and cultural memory. Architecture was one of the Order's most effective methods for preserving knowledge and concealing secrets. Commanderies, fortresses, and churches were often constructed with hidden chambers, underground vaults, and labyrinthine corridors designed to store treasures, manuscripts, and ritual implements. Symbolic motifs, geometric designs, and cryptic inscriptions conveyed lessons in morality, strategy, and spiritual wisdom to those initiated into the Order. Even the very layout of some buildings functioned as a code, embedding practical instructions and esoteric truths into stone and timber. This careful integration of secrecy into architectural design ensured that, even if the knights themselves were scattered, the Order's knowledge could endure, hidden yet accessible to those trained to see it. Ritual and ceremonial practice continued to preserve the Order's ethos. Initiation rites, daily observances, and symbolic gestures were maintained and passed down, ensuring that moral, spiritual, and practical lessons survived in dispersed communities. Symbols such as lions, serpents, twin riders, and crosses carried layered meanings. Instructions in vigilance, loyalty, discernment, and the safeguarding of knowledge. Ritual became a tool of continuity, providing both education and protection. Even in exile or isolation, knights could transmit the Order's principles to a new generation, keeping alive the identity, discipline, and philosophy of the Templars. Financial expertise was another pillar of post-dissolution influence. The Templars had been pioneers in secure methods of wealth transfer, including letters of credit, ledgers, and networks that allowed resources to move across vast distances. After the Order's suppression, these systems likely continued in modified forms, enabling surviving knights to maintain assets, protect treasures, and sustain networks of influence. The careful management of material resources was inseparable from the safeguarding of knowledge and sacred relics, creating a synergy between economic power and intellectual preservation. This combination allowed the Templars to exercise influence invisibly, quietly shaping events without drawing attention. The psychological and cultural impact of Templar survival was profound. Stories of knights guarding sacred relics, hidden manuscripts, and lost treasures captured the imagination of rulers, scholars, and ordinary people alike. Kings feared an invisible influence beyond their control, while common folk marveled at tales of miraculous feats and secret wisdom. Over time, these narratives evolved into legend, blurring the line between historical fact and myth. The perception of the Templars as a hidden, disciplined force amplified their influence, demonstrating that fear, respect, and fascination can be as potent as armies in shaping human history. Some surviving Templars are said to have traveled beyond Europe, carrying their knowledge, skills, and philosophy to the Mediterranean, the Levant, and North Africa. Skilled in military strategy, navigation, trade, and esoteric practice, they adapted to new environments while preserving the essence of the order. Even subtle contributions, such as architectural innovation, strategic counsel, or symbolic instruction, illustrate the Templars' enduring capacity to influence societies invisibly. Their networks, although clandestine, allowed the Order's principles to spread quietly, ensuring that Templar knowledge remained active even far from the European heartland. Encoded knowledge was central to the Order's survival strategy. Manuscripts, ritual practices, and symbolic architecture contained layered lessons designed for those initiated into the mysteries of the Order. This approach ensured continuity even when the physical organization was dismantled. The Templars' influence, therefore, was both cultural and intellectual, operating through systems of hidden knowledge, secret teaching, and symbolic communication. By embedding lessons into architecture, ritual, and artifacts, the Knights created a network of influence that could endure centuries, invisible yet powerful, shaping thought, behavior, and memory without overt authority. Ultimately, the Templars' post-dissolution survival is a testament to resilience, strategic thinking, and foresight. Knights who escaped persecution preserved not only material assets but an ethos, a method of understanding and operating in the world that combines secrecy, discipline, and devotion. Their influence extended across architecture, ritual, finance, and cultural memory, leaving traces that continue to captivate and intrigue. The Order's legacy demonstrates that power does not always manifest in overt displays. The most enduring influence is often invisible, carefully safeguarded, and transmitted through disciplined practice. The enduring story of the Templars offers a profound lesson. True power lies in what is hidden, protected, and carefully transmitted. By safeguarding knowledge, preserving ritual, and controlling resources, the Order ensured its influence would survive political upheaval, persecution, and the passage of centuries. Their story is not merely a historical curiosity. It is a demonstration of the enduring potency of foresight, discipline, and secrecy. The Templars became architects of invisible influence, shaping history through means that were largely unseen yet profoundly consequential, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire awe, curiosity, and reverence even today. Centuries passed, yet the shadow of the Templars never faded. Their symbols began to reappear in cathedrals, royal seals, and the secret emblems of new brotherhoods. The Red Cross, once carried on shields across the Holy Land, now adorned silent stone and whispered of a legacy that refused to die. Some said the Knights had merely changed their names, disguising themselves within new orders of chivalry and faith. Others believed their knowledge had been passed to secret societies devoted to preserving ancient wisdom and hidden truths. Whether through architecture, coded manuscripts, or bloodlines intertwined with the noble families of Europe, the influence of the temple endured like an ember buried beneath centuries of ash. Every few generations, someone would stumble upon a relic, a cryptic map, or a forgotten seal, reigniting the old question. Did the Templars truly vanish, or did they learn the one lesson every empire forgets? That survival lies not in glory, but in silence? Centuries passed, yet the echo of the Templars never faded. Their symbols appeared in architecture, their ideals whispered in secret societies, and their legend fused with the great mysteries of Western history. The Red Cross, once a mark of faith, became a cipher for hidden knowledge. Scholars searched archives, treasure hunters scoured ruins, and mystics claimed visions of the lost brotherhood. Every discovery led only to deeper questions. Were the Templars protectors of divine truth, or architects of something even greater? The more time distanced their fall, the closer their shadow seemed to draw across the corridors of history. Centuries have passed, yet the shadows of the Templars still linger, in stone, in symbol, in silence. Their towers crumble, their names fade, but the mystery endures, woven into the very fabric of history. Perhaps their greatest treasure was never gold or relics, but the wisdom that truth must sometimes be hidden to survive. The fire that consumed them did not erase their purpose, it transformed it. And so, their last crusade was not fought for land or crown, but for the soul of knowledge itself. What if that secret still waits, quietly shaping the world from behind the veil of time?